This is going to be another episode of Summoning Insight. Obviously, we are in the exciting portion of a lot of the leagues. We're entering playoffs in a bunch of the major regions, even including the LEC. Yeah, whatever. It's all good. LCS is even rolling. Well, maybe not certain teams, but we'll get into that.
Well,
and
some of them might be rolling,
thing,
but not in the sense that you mean, as in doing well. Maybe on drugs would describe their behavior.
Fudge was rolling his way down from the upper bracket to the lower brackets. He was doing that, I guess. But, aside from that, in the actual game, he was not really doing a whole lot of anything.
He was rolling some Gragas barrels, but he was rolling them way worse than Bwipo was.
Yes. And since we're talking about different parts of the world, this show is brought to you in association with with ExpressVPN. And this is, of course, a VPN service or virtual private network. If you want to be able to either show yourself as from a different location by connecting through somewhere else, or you want to access something that maybe is region locked in your region. Well, a classic thing is, because you can use this service to change your online location, and they have hundreds of different locations, so you can basically pick almost where you want to be from on the internet. That allows you to potentially access, for example, we all use those streaming services for TV and movies, don't we? Well, certain regions, in fact, I will just say it, basically all regions have certain content that is limited specifically to that region. It's based on things like if they paid for the rights and then where they want to distribute it and all that sort, and obviously cultural mores of the different regions. And one thing I'll say is this is actually something I have come across myself many, many times in the last, I would say, the era of the streaming services. You've probably done the same thing, Monty. You think, right, well, nowadays there must be somewhere online. So you go and you type that thing in, don't you? This movie that I'm looking for streaming. And then the most annoying thing of all time, you all know what I'm about to say, is it shows it on one of your streaming services. Could be Amazon, could be Netflix. You go, well, I've got that one. You click it. We all know where this is going. You go there and it isn't on yours. It turns out that either is like an old link, or even worse, it's on the American one and you're in Europe, or it's on the European one, you're in America, or it's on Australian one and you're in, you know what I mean? So in that kind of scenario, we all know how frustrating that is. But if you have something like ExpressVPN, no problem for you. You switch it to whatever the relevant one is, Australia, European country, America, then you can access the content.
All right, here's an example, Thorin. I'm literally using ExpressVPN to Japan right now while I'm in Korea, because in Korea on Twitch, it doesn't save the VODs. So I want you guys to have the Twitch VOD to view later, which some of you undoubtedly will be viewing this show on. So ExpressVPN is allowing that. And also, since I'm in Korea, Thorin, you know what I don't have access to? Hulu or Max, because they're US-only services.
Yes.
And I can tell you, ExpressVPN is the easiest. I've tried a lot of VPNs, Thorin, and this is the one that works 100% of the time with those services. And I watch these. I watch, I watch Max.
Also incredibly simple. It literally is one where you press a button. There's like a drop down a button. That's it. It's not like it's not some like nerd Linux AI. If you're new to it, it'll be so easy to use.
Yeah, and I pay for these services. I pay for them, so we're not talking about doing anything illegal. I'm just getting access to the things that I pay for.
You literally want them to take your money. It's shut up and take my money.
I'm trying so hard.
Drama, yes. So anyway, obviously it's fast. It works on any device. You can use it on your mobile as well. You can put it on a whole bunch of different devices in your house, your tablet, etc. It encrypts your data, which obviously has its own benefit now in the modern day. But we're not just actually telling you how good ExpressVPN is. You can get 3 months extra with ExpressVPN if you use our special link, which is expressvpn.com/summoning. So expressvpn.com, all one word, /summoning. You know how it's spelled, SUMMONING. There you go. You get 3 extra months free with your subscription.
It's great.
Obviously, support us as well as getting 3 extra months.
Yep.
If you think about getting a VPN, think about ExpressVPN.
Yeah, and I had to get a VPN when I came back to Korea. I tried a few. This one's the best one. I can tell you that right away, guys. This one's the best one. So thank you very much to ExpressVPN. Just a good thing to have, especially on public Wi-Fi networks when you're out there with your phone. Like, don't screw around with that, man. Like, don't send unencrypted data over public Wi-Fi networks. That's just stupid. So works great for your phone, too. Mine's always on my phone at this point in time. So thanks a lot.
I don't actually think it's mad, by the way. The times I have actually seen it was more old back in the day, but I have seen people in airports pull out their laptop, go onto the public Wi-Fi of the airport, and then start like logging in their bank details. And I'm
my God.
This is mental. What are you doing? Like just like to pay a bill or something.
Yeah.
Is this the time or place?
Now's the time to check my crypto wallet. They deserve what they get. Don't be one of those.
They do it away. They do. It's also why, as an aside, by the way, I've always been amazed at some of the people who are like not even famous, massive people who live in a mansion with armed security guards who actually brag about owning specific amounts of crypto. It's like, mate, you haven't thought this through at all. You haven't actually thought through. This is how I know you don't believe in it. You haven't thought through what if you win, you idiot? What if people know you have millions of dollars? And even worse, if you've ever said online that you have it in cold storage, you actually, like what he says, deserve everything coming your way. You deserve the like sort of anarcho futuristic world where someone rocks up in that Mad Max style and just tells you, give us the thumb drive, basically. Like, it's over for you at that point. I don't know why anyone would ever do that. So, what a weird flex. And just be secretly rich, you idiot. Why don't you let anyone know? In fact, the whole benefit, Monty, in crypto in theory is no one has to ever know you have it. You can actually just like be secretly rich. They have to blow it. They have to blow it as usual.
That's the quality of the nouveau riche, though. They have to blow it. They have to show it off. That's how you know people who have generational wealth, is that they're not out there flaunting it. It's part of being classy, guys. Stay classy while you're rich. Anyway,
there's actually loads of stuff we could talk about on this episode. As I said, it's not only all the playoffs, mate, even the LEC one has some mad bit. I mean, the Carmine Corp didn't.
There's tons to talk about.
The amount of storylines, there's too many good ones. There's too many good ones.
But first, we have to talk about LCK All-Pro because it just fucking tilts me so hard. I spoke about this with Wolf on the Monty and Wolf show before the actual All-Pro came out. And I think it is just fucking egregious once again. So, put this up for you guys. We have 4 out of the 5 members of Gen G are in the first team All-Pro. And the only one who didn't make it was Lehens, who was...
Even that melts my fucking brain, bro, because 1, he was your MVP last split, so you thought he was the shit in KT. And then 2, if the whole thing we're doing is the number 1 team gets all 5 players, then it makes no sense to put 4 and then go, but wait a minute, that'd be ridiculous to put them all. And then not. It's like, what's mad about that is that's almost like the fuck you Lehens vote. Like, what even is that? Because when we get into this, mate, it doesn't. The biggest problem with this one specifically, Monty, is there's no rhyme or reason. The logic on the last 2 went, whoever's number 1 just gets all 5. I at least if it's consistent, Monty, even if I don't like it, I can at least get the premise. I have no idea how this was calculated. It doesn't even make sense to me, mate.
I will say, special shout out to Atlas, who by not putting Lehens in his top 3 actually prevented Lehens from getting into the first place. So it was nearly all 5, but right. Shout out to Atlas, who actually put Carrier, then Barrel, and then Delight, so that Lehens did not get into first team All-Pro.
By the way, even though we're joking about this, obviously Lehens probably shouldn't have been first. Like, I actually do think Carrier should be the one that you put there.
Yes.
I think that's totally fair. I mean, the problem obviously becomes why aren't the other positions allowed to fucking change? Because the idea the other 4 are all the best is like, really?
The idea, Thorin, the idea that Pays, who is the worst player on Gen G, is better than Viper is so fucking ridiculous. I can barely contain it. Like, this is, look, I get your arguments for Keen. First off, as I discussed with Wolf, Keen is a very strong candidate compared to Zeus, right? But I probably would have put Zeus first. I probably would have done Zeus, Canyon, Chovy, Viper, Carry.
The problem you have with the Zeus one, I'll tell you right now, Monty, is this. As someone who's not only like followed esports, but I've always done the meta parsing of what people think about esports, the meta contextual. Right, I'll tell you right now, the number 1 problem you have if you're Zeus is a lot of his really amazing games were at the beginning of the split, and no one remembers the beginning of the split. They just remember the last like 3 weeks, and so that was when they weren't even playing the top as much. So I think sadly people have just forgotten how long the split is. Like, he was really good at the beginning. He was a monster.
So the arguments for Zeus are, yes, he was a monster. Secondly, that he was blind picking a lot, and he was blind picking Aatrox. Everybody knew he was going to do it, and yet he was like, I think he won his first 9 games of the split on Aatrox before he lost. And he was just really consistent. So even though it was predictable, the answer for Keen is like, Keen has been arguably, Keen has a very high counter pick rate. He has like the highest counter pick rate among LCK top laners, and so he's getting a lot of favorable matchups because that's the way that Gen G wants to play their draft. The thing about Zeus is he was blinding a lot so that they would get other players favorable matchups, right? And he was still dominating, still looking insane on the Aatrox. So I think it really depends on what you value. And I think Zeus really does have a very good claim to being, first team All-Pro. they played very different styles within their team. So it's just, I personally prefer Keen, but Keen also had some bad games, right? And was more of like a Cassante Udyr merchant for the most part. So, I mean, I think both of them had really good splits. And to your point, Thorin, the reason why I think people are voting for FaZe now is because they forgot what happened in the first part of the split, which is FaZe and Lehen's were bad in lane, guys. Like, in the early game, FaZe and Lehen's laning was a huge weakness for Gen G. And that is the reason why when they played against T1 was first picking Lucian in those games, is because they thought they were just going to roll over the bot lane and then use that as the ticket to victory. Now, that didn't happen, and credit to FaZe and Lehen's, the laning phase did get, shape up. But Viper has been a player who has been consistent throughout the entire split. He has moved with the meta better than Gumayusi or FaZe. FaZe was kind of bad early and good later. Gumayusi was kind of good early and worse later, right? And you could say Keria, yeah, he's fallen off a little bit, but you guys are forgetting like the total domination he had in the early and middle parts of the split. And you also have to think about which of these players are contributing the most to their team's success and their team's style. And without Keria and Zeus, like T1 doesn't work. Like they just don't fucking work as a team. Whereas, I mean, we literally saw Ruler get subbed out for FaZe and Gen G still be functional. And I think that FaZe is very good, and I think he does deserve top 3 All-Pro, but he hasn't had the same level of burden to carry because his solo laners are Keen and Chovy, guys. Look at Viper. He's got fucking Zeka, who is like trash for a lot of this split. Did get better recently again. Recency bias says Zeka's been performing pretty well. And Doran. Like, come, give me a fucking break. Like, Viper has Atlas, he is the weight of the world. He's Atlas with the world on his shoulders on this fucking HLE team, and he's been great the entire time. He's been great on a variety of champions. He's been great in the different metas. So it's pretty ridiculous that we could have 3 teams that are very close in terms of record at the top of the standings, and we don't have any Hanwha players in the top in any of the top positions. Seems crazy.
I mean, I think this is actually one of the most egregious ones I've seen in years, because I will reiterate the principle I always explain when it comes to these awards, because I think it's very much lost. The reason why, Monty, I actually hate the thinking that exists. This is essentially what they do in both the NFL and the NBA, which is you're not actually picking the best players at their position. You're picking from the top-ranked teams which players look like they're the best at their position. And if you can't see the distinction there, you're going to miss the whole point of what I'm saying here, because what I hate about this is, you know what actually tells you how good teams are? The league table. Do you know what tells you who the best team is? The fucking championship final. You don't need to vote on those things. The game takes care of that for us. So when we do, by definition, an individual award, we're only judging you as an individual. We're not judging what your team did. That doesn't make any sense. We're looking at your play and how good you are. And by the way, this is why individual awards are brilliant, Monty. This is why All-Pro awards are brilliant. Because you know this, if you are in the NFL and you are Barry Sanders, it doesn't matter that the GM of the Lions can't make a team that can win the NFL. You are so good that when people watch you, they might actually even say, this guy's even better than Emmitt Smith, who's on the actual champion Cowboys. I think he's just better individually. Now, the analogy here would be if the LCK fans and, media and coaches and pros voted for the NFL, Barry Sanders would never have had a single individual accomplishment ever in his whole career. They would have treated him like a fucking bomb because he never made the playoffs. And they would have given Emmitt Smith everything constantly, 24/7, as though he was the greatest ever and no debate, right? Because in this particular scenario, if you are Viper, right, one of the saddest things is, this is why, Monty, the incentives are fucked in esports. The genius is, if you actually treated this individual award as, I'm going to reward the best individual player at ADC, then there's a world, right, where first of all, Viper would probably be first pro team like this, right? So he'd get first team, even though his team itself is in third, right? And he'd even be an MVP candidate. You know what amazing incentive that is for an individual player? It means if you're a truly great player and you go to a team that doesn't wind up being the best, just ball out, dude. If you ball out at the end, we'll still give you your award. We'll say, you know what, mate? It's not your fault that Hanwha Life couldn't get better players. It's not your fault Zeka can't players here. You know what? Fuck it. You get your award. There's your MVP. There's your first team All-Pro. And at least history will remember your team wasn't the best, but you were. You were fucking cracked. No. Instead, as you say, we're not even, by the way, the Piers isn't even debatable. Because as you said, he's not even important on his own team. He wasn't particularly good. Half the people, by the way, voting for this guy must have been the ones who were underrating him last year as well. Like the idea, he's not even some like legacy name. Meanwhile, Viper is so cracked. And this is where I know you can't win against idiots. Because I've seen people just comment on like the lost games or the times that Hanwha obviously got beaten by the top teams, didn't they? Because they themselves weren't that good and they got a fluke win at the end. Doesn't matter though. His team is worse. Like also, of all the roles to play, guys, you cannot 1v9 from ADC from minute one in the game. It's the only carry role that it is impossible to just win the game. I mean, you can't even get through a fucking lane on your own. You have a second player there. And the maddest part about this logic is this. It's even worse than you think, guys. They are actually saying the collective intelligence of the LCK is telling you Piers is not only the best ADC, his support isn't even that good. I can't even take this, mate.
It's not even
that. It's even stupider than the original premise of just him being the best.
It's not even that. So Chovy is rightfully, by the way, Thor, and here's something they got right. Chovy's the MVP of the split. That is 100% accurate. He was the only candidate.
Dunk, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it was anybody but Chovy would have been actually just like a war crime. So I mean, I guess. So what you're telling me is that Viper, the dude that literally had to play with Zeka's Corki for multiple games where he was actively running it down, Viper is winning games with Zeka's Corki. And meanwhile, FaZe is winning games with Chovy as the MVP of the entire league. And somehow Chovy is the better player. And here's what's even crazier, Thorin, is that we had the classic. Almost all of the commentators and analysts on the Korean side voted all of Gen G into first team All-Pro. Cloud Templar.
Classic.
Nofe. Pony. Gogo. And here's the other thing. All the players did this as well. Faker. Coma. Dandy. Peanut. Supreme.
Faker confirmed fucking pleb, by the way. Faker is a fucking pleb. Or he just doesn't say what he actually thinks. Because, by the way, what's mad about that is, you know this, Monty. I even know why they do this. The way that the Korean culture works is very collectivist. And they're thinking, even if you're a pro or a coach, goes like this. It goes, whoever won and was number one, they all must have done their job. That's the logic.
Yes,
by the way,
they are the best players because the best players have the best teamwork. So ergo, they are the best.
Here's the sad thing about it, though, Monty. If you're not giving an award, actually, as like an actual philosophy, it's a great philosophy to get everyone to pull together and to work together and to not worry about who the star is and to just it is actually a brilliant way to like run a society. The problem is you can't then give awards. Like these awards are by definition in bad faith. They're disingenuous. Like it doesn't make any sense to say that. It's why actually, if you don't understand, guys, you know when Chovy had never won LCK and he used to say all those weird comments after every final, like he essentially sort of like almost sounded like he was blaming himself. Like I'm just not good enough and I need to win. Like what people don't get about that is like Koreans to have that mindset of like you either win for real or it doesn't count. They don't want to hear the stuff I just said about Viper. Like, but you were the best, mate, even though you were in the third. They don't want to hear that. They want to go like, look, when I win, I'll win, and when I didn't, I didn't. Like that. Which again, for a pro player, great mindset. It'll get you to the top. It'll mean you won't give up. You won't do what we would do in the West, which is in the West you would swag. Like, you know what? I'm fucking sick with these dickhead teammates. What they do, you won't do that. So again, in like just a general everyday sense, I actually think it's a great philosophy to have. The problem is when you go judge an award and you say the award is individually who is each of the best players, then you're just being an idiot at that point in time. You know what I mean? Like you're just not doing what it says on the tin, are you? What are we doing?
I think what's so crazy to me is looking at the list of the people who voted. There were only 2 people on the team side, Thorin, that voted for Viper as first team All-Pro. So all of the Western casters basically did it, but actually all the Western casters except for Huni voted Viper first team. The only 2 people on the team side were Lehens, who voted Viper instead of FaZe. Which he couldn't vote for his own teammates, so he had to. He had to, guys. He had to.
Yeah, you have to.
But the one person besides him who could have voted for FaZe was based CV Max, who voted Zayas, Canyon, Chovy, Viper, Carrier, which is what I would have voted. So shout out CV Max.
I told you, because by the way, Monty, if people don't know, I'll give you a little extra secret that people don't know about why I ride with CV Max. Because, bro, I get crazy Reaper vibes from him, where you know how it is. The whole thing is, if they were actually smart in Korea, guys, Reaper would have been one of the coaches that led them all to World Cup, but they didn't, because the whole thing was he wasn't a super collectivist figure who was willing to let his boss take all. He was the guy where it's like, hey, I'm the thinker. He was an individualist, essentially. He's very much more. That's why actually America's the
Reaper
perfect place for him.
is not very Korean.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
So to me, CV Max has that same vibe, mate. I get this vibe of like he's actually willing to step out of the group think, and he's willing to have the balls to say, I don't agree with this. I'm going to go a different route, even if it's unpopular. By the way, I've got a couple of things to throw in here as well. One, I'm just going to say this right now. You know, I love this, Monty. One of my little fucking kinks in esports is exposing people I think are frauds. So you know how every commentator in the West promises you they watch LCK religiously because they're all going to try and get that fucking Worlds final, aren't they, Monty? If it's Gen G against fucking T1, they want to be on that and then present to the audience that they know these teams and can really talk about them authoritatively. But the problem is you slip up every now and then. And if you know how like an episode of like fucking Sherlock or Monk works, I don't actually need to investigate this. I can just look at what you say and infer from it what you're thinking. So here's how it goes. You know how it's been years now, Monty, since they got rid of that stupid system where the MVP used to just be the player with the most player of the game awards, right? Hence why BDD won it a million times, because as I always said, if he was on a top team, he would always play Azir, his jungler would play Lee Sin, he would get rolling, and he would just win the award every time because it looked like the Azir carried the game and did the most damage. So famously, they changed that, and then as a result, you got to have people like the Trophies of the World win the MVP, right? But now, what they did is they didn't get rid of it completely because they still wanted to play the game. So instead, they made two awards, didn't they? They made MVP, and then they made Player of the Split. And Player of the Split still is most player of the games, and MVP is just voted on, right? This is where Azel, good old friend, who I have totally admitted is one of the only people in esports I hate view, he came along, even though funny thing is I actually respect his esports career. I just think he says consistently the most boneheaded, American-centric things about esports that make no sense if you actually didn't live just in the puddle that is LCS. But because he wants to pretend to be a global figure watching the whole game, he came along, and this split, guys, was essentially like, what's this like Player of the Split and MVP? So first of all, you obviously haven't been watching LCK, but you didn't watch the last years. I can tell you straight up, that's been there the whole time. So one, that's mad suspicious. What? I'm supposed to believe you watched all these broadcasts and followed the whole thing. He never found out about these awards. Then secondly, he then tried to infer, right? Player of the Split, surely the MVP is the player. Oh, you like logical consistency, motherfucker. Well, you know what? I don't think so, Monty, but I'm pretty sure Azil wasn't actually in LCS in like 2017, right? I think he came later than that, didn't he?
No, I think he was there by 2017.
Was he there in 2017?
Yeah,
Someone look that up, because all I'll say is this. People might not know this, but are you ready? So his concept he can't understand is, how could you be the player of the split, which by the way infers best player, not most valuable, but the other guy is the most valuable. He's acting like those are the same thing. Well, then let me put a piece of logic before you, dickhead. So if I was to vote all the players in the league who are the best at their position, Monty, and I gave the best mid laner of LCS to Jensen, then logically, another mid laner couldn't be the MVP of the league, right? But it was in the LCS. Jensen was first team All-Pro LCS Season 7 Summer mid laner. So that means Idiot said he's the best mid laner in the game. And then when asked who was the best player, they went, Bjergsen, of course. That happened in your league, homie. That was your league. Your league did exactly what they're doing now in 2024 back in the day. And you know what? It's even a banger reference because Jensen relevant as fuck right now still, isn't he? By the way, that video I did a few years ago aged like fucking absolute fine wine, where I said the only way Jensen's ever allowed to win in the minds of fans is he has to actually lift the trophy. Every second before that, he's never as good. He's always just washed. And then he just has to lift the trophy again, as he has done a bunch of times. But anyway, I thought that was a fun one because it did sort of show to me like, are you even following this league, mate? That's actually embarrassing to tweet, mate. Like, what's mad is, I'll guarantee he even has mutuals in the LCK. Just fucking DM them privately, like, because he made it sound like they just invented this now, mate. This has been around for a while. If you don't know, last split, it was like, I think it was like fucking Chovy was like the MVP, and then Canyon was the player of the split. If people remember when he was on like
MVP of
split up.
Last split, but yeah.
Oh, sorry, which one am I thinking of then? Maybe I'm thinking of like 2 years ago then. Maybe I'm thinking of 2022, could be, whatever. But anyway, there've been ones where they were split and it wasn't, this time it was Chovy for both. But that was the point anyway to make, is that actually, the joke is Chovy even won on both ends in the LCK to bring it back, Monty. He's the MVP, which he is. And obviously he's the player of the game all the time because he just is the player of the game, isn't he? So that's even one of the rare times they got that one right.
Yeah.
Which also is why he's the MVP 100%, by the way, because if anything, in his team, there should have been loads of shared player of the games, but it's just Chovy in it again. He's just the fucking best. Even on a stacked team, he is the best.
Yeah. I mean, I think Chovy has been really amazing this split. He's played 16 different champions. He has been incredibly dominant. He's actually been roaming a lot more. He's picked up a lot of the shot calling duties on Gen G. So I think it's almost inconceivable. Like, he's clearly the number one mid laner. And even though Faker did have a good split, and I think Faker does deserve number two, but it's very difficult to say an MVP could be anybody but Chovy. And unfortunately, Thorin, if we actually have to start talking about most valuable player to their team, then we have to start talking about Viper, because Viper is another candidate for the MVP role.
My second one, mate. After Chovy, he would be my second one. Because why not? What you have to ask is this. It's the other way around, mate. This is why the individual award should be judged differently from teams. Because I think the only reason Hanwha Life was in third and actually was able to win games off those top teams is because of this fucking guy. Go watch the set. This guy had to do everything. And by the way, that's why I said earlier I get mad when they point out games he lost. Mate, I have seen this guy, this split, have nightmare fuel games where it's like the worst solo queue game ever for an ADC, and nothing you could do could ever get you out of like a team fight. Like, I've seen someone say, and by the way, he's even won some of those team fights that I thought were impossible. That's how cracked this guy is. He
also plays a very selfless style. Like, he doesn't play for KDA, which is also very impressive. So if you guys go back and watch their final game of the split, which was versus D+, he's playing Lucian. And the thing about Lucian is that in some of these compositions, so D+ is like running, single target lockdown, basically. So what happens in these games is that he's playing as you do when you play Lucian in the East. You play it very far forward, trying to get a lot of poke damage down, right? And what we see is that on some of these compositions where we've got like Vi, Ari, right, who are trying to single target CC somebody. Meanwhile, on Hanwha Life, they have Gnar, Maokai, Yone, and Nami. So what happens is Viper will dash forward, culling, or do a lot of damage with like rapid fire cannon and static shiv, right? And he will then just get ulted or charmed. He'll get Vi ulted or charmed. They'll use all their resources on killing Viper. And then what happens is the counter engage with Tidal Wave, with Maokai ult, with Yone ult, just completely decimates D+. So effectively, Viper is playing correctly in this game, and he's doing a huge amount of damage. And the choice he's giving D+ is you can either use all your cooldowns on me, and then we counter engage onto you with much more AoE CC, or I just get to poke you for free. And so D+, chose to engage on him, but they lost team fights as a result. Viper ends game 1, 3-4-11 on Lucian. You might be like, that's not a great scoreline. If you watch him play, he plays Lucian incredibly well in this game. And he passes the eye test like a motherfucker. But the thing about Viper is he's not a KDA player. He is literally he knows what his job is, and he's doing his fucking job. And when he dies, all of D+ die in response. And it's just a great, I think this is one of the things that is really good about Hanwha Life. And again, credit to Peanut's shot calling, is that they have very clear ideas as a team of how their team fights and win conditions are going to play out. And you really see it beautifully in the D+ series.
By the way, that's even sort of genius if you think about it, because it's almost like the analogy is, think of like a team sport. It's like he's just drawing the double team so his teammates open. He just gives them a chance by intentionally bringing the attention.
Yes. Yeah, basically. And here's the thing, Thorin. We also all obviously have to run the mental experiment, which is, what happens if Viper is on Gen G instead of Pays? And the answer is Gen G is better.
And go the other way around. Put Pays on Hanwha Life and let's see him have a nice split, shall we? They'd be fucking, the joke is they'd probably be like fourth or something, wouldn't they? We're talking about with nothing.
Like Viper on Gen G makes Gen G.
That would be sexy as fuck, by the way. Imagine that. It's why I said earlier, by the way, how's that aged? Where I said to T1, remember what I said in the off-season, Monty, right after they won Worlds? I said I would do a Belichick, mate. I'd still upgrade. I'd get Viper in. I'd get fucking Canyon in as like a jump goal. As usual, I know nothing. So enjoy Owner and Gumayushi, dickheads. I'll see you in the finals.
It's like the Griffin reunion on that team at that point in time, right? With Chovy and Viper and Lehens. Imagine at their current skill levels, that would be one of the most super teams to ever exist. The thing that is preventing Gen G from being even more of a super team is Pays, guys. It's Pays. He's the he's the worst player on this roster. I'm not saying he's bad. He's not bad. He's very good.
No,
but
no, so let's be real. We were fine with them keeping him because he was really good last year. It's just here's the problem. It sometimes happens. You know the concept, Monty. It's why they call it the difficult sophomore album, because the logic goes every band's first album's good. That's why you heard of them. But the second one's trickier. You have to reinvent yourself. His problem is he just didn't make it into the second year as good as he was in the first. He was kind of he looked awesome that first year, not as good now.
So what was ridiculous was last summer I had to go on an anti-Pays campaign for MVP because I was hearing rumors that people were actually thinking about voting him for MVP before KT finished stronger at the end of the split, right? Before KT was in first place. And my argument is that Pays never actually has to do the hard work of carrying the game himself. He's great as he's a janitor. He cleans up. And that's fine. Like, he can be a janitor. He can be a Zeri player who just, cleans up team fights.
This team, his job really is to be like a prayer type character. Yeah, but the others carry.
But my question was, what happens when Pays has the resources and the rest of his team is down? And we saw that at the end of summer, and it's been a long time. He might have gotten better, but we haven't really had to see that with Gen G. Like, my question is, what happens when Chovy and Keen are down and Canyon doesn't have pressure and Pays has 3 kills? Does he carry that game? Because I can tell you right now, Gen G didn't win those games last year. They did not win those games when Pays had to step up and be the carry. I've seen Viper win those games. I've seen Ruler win those games. You know what I mean? And he's a very good young player, but I need to see him ascend to the next level to be that star. And I think a lot of the Koreans are desperate to make this guy another superstar. Like, they are pushing the Pays narrative so hard. And I think there is a fear amongst like the Korean people in the scene that all of the superstars are like kind of getting old and we haven't had any new blood, right, in a long time that has ascended to like real superstar status. And so they really want Pays to be that thing, right? And when he's winning all the time, like he did last year and this year, it's very easy. It's a lot harder to say, oh, well, we've got Lucid and Perfect and Bull, who are all on like mid-table teams, and say like, oh, this is going to be the next superstar player. So I just don't think Pays has a very hard job in Gen G.
The most boring thing about this when it comes to awards for individual players, Monty, is 2 obvious things to mention. 1, teams don't have unlimited salary. Therefore, all the best players don't play in all the best positions in the number 1 team. That's just an obvious concept anyone can understand right now. And then the other one is this. First of all, you don't tend to make super teams of the best players in all positions because they don't really work in terms of in-game balance. In every single team, logically, Monty, one of the 3 traditional carry roles isn't hardcore carrying. So whether it's top or AD, usually, it's very rarely mid. Shout out to fucking BDS. But it's usually obviously top or AD, depending on how you play. So in that scenario, assuming we all understand that's how League of Legends is played, you can't say all 3 are the best. Like, how do the other teams have a chance if this is the logic? I've never understood that part either. You're the number 1 team with all the best players. Well, why aren't they just murking the whole league unbeaten then? What are you talking about?
Yeah, and here's the other problem with the logic that's happened recently is that, so for example, Keria is first team All-Pro. 3 players, Zeus, Owner, and Faker, are second team All-Pro. And Gumayushi is third team All-Pro with the rest of Hanwha. But Hanwha beat T1 kind of convincingly. So what you're telling me is that no Hanwha players are first team All-Pro, but T1s are. 3 are second team, but only 1 of Hanwha. And then it's just Guma and 4 Hanwha players on all LCK third team. So tell me, explain to me, if this is true, how they beat Hanwha. Explain. Somebody please, T1 fans, please explain to me how this happened. Because,
by the way, I'm actually low-key sad now that you told me that thing about Atlas, and I know there's a world where they would have had. Think about this, Monty. They would have had, if he hadn't voted for that, then the second team All-Pro would be T1 with Viper, and I would have been able to do the tweet I wish I could do, which is so a better version of T1 then, which is all I wanted. That's all I wanted to do. That would be my tweet immediately. Of course.
But like, so, and the funny thing is that T1 fans have to wrestle with this in their mind, which is either you must admit that Hanwha has better teamwork and better shot calling than T1, or better drafting, or like that's the only option because they don't have better players. I guess they just don't. You know, you're saying that like, and here's the other problem. Okay, so you say, well, Viper is just a huge carry, and like he was the one. So if that's the case, if Viper's like beating all of T1, why is he not first team All-Pro? Because Pays wasn't clapping your cheeks. T1 like kind of was actually. Pays kind of did clap their cheeks, but
I mean everyone clapped them in that game. But yeah, true.
Pays was much better than I think T1 anticipated in that series, and credit to Pays. But yeah,
I mean,
it was.
I'm with you, mate. If you just two, I actually think the other one's more effective. The problem with the one of like, if you put Viper on GNG is we know they'd be way better, but to the fellow, but they already won anyway. I think it's the other one. I don't think you could. This is why I know he's the best. There is no other ADC you could put on GNG. So, for example, the joke is they have made the third team GNG, but with Gumayushi instead. If Gumayushi was instead of Viper on GNG, they wouldn't be in the position they're in. Like they again. By the way, I'm just going to say right now, any ADC that's in LCK now plays on Hanwha Life instead of Viper, and it wouldn't even be the stratification you have. It would be T1 and Genji at the top, and then it would be Hanwha, KT, and D plus shitters in that fucking middle area, and they would all just lose random games and win random. It wouldn't even, like, Hanwha Life's whole stability was this guy. He's the one player every game you knew would turn up.
Right, and like there's just a lot of other questions about this too. So Owner has been the worst player on T1.
As fuck, of course.
And especially in, I mean, he got like mega clapped by Peanut in their last series, and he got mega clapped by Canyon in their last series versus Gen G. And so what you're telling me is that Owner is better than Peanut, when Owner basically, if his bot lane isn't winning, actually can't do anything in the jungle. But Peanut, who has to play with way worse teammates, especially solo lanes, well, you know, and has better pathing than Owner, I guess like that doesn't mean anything, and is shot calling. So I know Peanut hasn't had the best split. Like that's just straight up true. Like I'm not saying,
yeah, look at his teammates. Look at his solo lanes, for fuck's sake.
I mean, he's always had Doran, so he's used to that one. But
true, but even so, come on, mate.
I mean, Doran often
these are really questions I almost think should be principles to think about. We almost should write a guide for how to think about how to do this award voting, Monty. Like, I'll give you an example, as you just said there. Are you voting for the jungler? What are his solo laners? Because all I'll say is compare Peanut solo laners to the other people in contention for these fucking roles. The other people have like the people who are the best in the world at those roles. He doesn't even have the best LCK fucking players in the solo lanes. What are we talking about here?
I mean, there's also a lot of other questions that we could bring up, Thorin, such as, you know, KT had a 60% win rate. They were 11-7 at the end of the season. Are you telling me there are no KT players within the top 3 roles? They also beat Gen G, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, guys, look, I hate this iteration of KT. I fucking hate them. But even I will say that, like, BDD probably should be in the conversation for third team All-Pro. Like, is Pyosik better than Owner? That's a true question. Like, Pyosik's had some stinker games, but he's also had some mega hard carry games. And he is more crucial to KT's success. And to, you know, honestly, maybe Beryl. Again,
even
like
Beryl might actually deserve that third team one. I agree. He actually might. He just actually might. I mean, he was aside, he might actually deserve it. He wasn't bad.
I hate to say it, but you know, there are players that we can at least have conversations about. Showmaker hasn't been good. I mean, his Tristana games recently were miserable, but Showmaker has also been the only good thing about this D+ roster for the most part of this. I will
say, Monty, I also do think if we're going to go through all 3, why is Zekra on there?
So
I'm missing something.
Again, it's recency bias. It's recency bias, Thorin. So recently,
God, the first few weeks he was complete ass.
I mean, I don't like Zeka on this list because I remember the Corky times, and like the Corky times disqualify him from being in any of the All-Pro teams.
I agree with you. Again, if this is about celebrating individual success, and we're even trying to almost say like, hey, Viper, not your fault, my life sucks. Actually, wouldn't that be the perfect one? Hey, BDD, I know KT wasn't that good this split, but hey, at least you were better than Zekra, had better teammates than you. But instead, we don't. We give the opposite incentive. Fuck you, BDD. You weren't on a top 3 team.
I mean, the crazy thing is that Zeka won a bunch of those Corky games where he was playing like complete shit because the rest of his team just dragged his lame-ass corpse across the finish line. His control mage play was really bad, guys. Like, his last couple of Taliyah games have been really good, and credit to him. but a lot of his, games from earlier this split were quite terrible. And I just have a long memory, and like I think that Zeka's performance has been very uneven, but he ended strong, so there's bias, right? There's bias there. But I think BDD, for me, BDD probably would be my third All-Pro vote. And also, a lot of people did actually vote him third team All-Pro, to be fair.
Oh, fair play.
They did. A lot of people did. But yeah, Zeka has been good in the last couple weeks, but early mid split, he was atrocious. He was just really bad in a lot of games. And honestly, Thorin, if we had to criticize somebody, like the reason why Hanwha is probably not above T1 in the table is because of Zeka.
Oh, of course. Remember, he plays the most influential fucking position in the game.
It has to be somebody's fault.
This thing is, I mean, we've made this point 1 million times. Think about this, Monty. We spent the whole split saying, look, I'll take Scout even in his current form, bring him back, just bring him fucking over to Korea. Like, it's a waste of time, isn't it? What a fucking world. What a world.
That said, I think, Hanwha has a very good shot of beating T1 later in these playoffs.
Certainly going to be spicy.
It's going to be a fun one because that's almost certainly going to happen. Because Hanwha plays Kwangdong. Hanwha will crush Kwangdong.
And crucially, this is the thing, Monty. I've already realised, because it's happened 3 times in a row, that they're not, even if Gen G beats T1, the T1 idiot's still going to go, don't look like anything to me. So now I need their punishment to be more severe. I need them to lose to Hanwha. Like, it's why before I wanted them to lose to KT just for the historical reasons, like, fuck you. But actually, Hanwha would be funnier, mate. That would actually be it would be so funny if fucking Shitel Zeka beats Faker in the best of series again. But this time, it would be so fucking funny if that happened, mate. I actually don't play. I low-key don't want it to happen. I actually think Gen G T1 would be the better final. But just for the T1 fans, I do want it to happen.
Well, also, Doran and Peanut being T1's father until the end of time is also pretty funny.
Complete meme, I know. Yeah. Especially because Peanut obviously was on T1 and then all the T1 fans flamed him. How's that worked since then? It's won a few MVPs, give me a break.
So yeah, I think
the playoffs are going to be a banger though. I'm actually mad excited for this.
I'm not excited for the first round. The first round is going to be a dumpster fire. I'm excited for the second round because Gen G is not going to pick the winner of KT or D+, or they will pick that because they don't want to play Hanwha, obviously. KT versus D+ was a clown fiesta the last time we saw. It was a terrible match, but it was very exciting. But it was very bad League of Legends. So, we could get like 4 50-minute games in that one. We got 2 50-minute games in the last one.
Because the key thing is, one, obviously Gen G are the one that get to pick. But since the other matchup is KTD+, it doesn't matter who wins. They're definitely 100% going to pick them.
Yes.
That's the best part. So it means if you're T1, you have no choice. You are definitely...
Yes.
Unless basically Kwangdong does the most insane upset of all time, you are definitely playing Hanwha Live.
You're definitely playing Hanwha.
Probably twice in this tournament in best of 5. And I tell you what, I'm in for that one. Because unlike the KT ones in those betrayals of last year, I actually do trust people like Peanut to actually fucking do a better job in the playoffs in the LCK, mate. I actually do think they'll fucking hold it up. And Viper is going to go fucking ham in those series. I can't wait. It's going to be the shit.
Yeah, I think those matches are going to be very dangerous for T1. But yeah, I think, what's going to probably happen is KT's going to beat D+. Anything besides Hanwha beating Kwangdong is a massive upset. Then Gen G's going to pick KT, and then T1's going to pick Hanwha, and Gen G will crush KT. But the question is, who wins that T1 Hanwha one? Because all of a sudden that is very interesting. I think T1 will be a lot better in the playoffs than they were in the last, because they kind of got exposed a little bit in some of their strategies. And I think they'll retool. And also there are things that are really going to help. So the patch that is going to be in the playoffs is 14.6. This is with the Smolder nerf. So we don't have to necessarily see Gumayushi's ass Zeri anymore. Potentially, although we'll see. We've seen a lot more Zeri Pro play around the world recently in general. So it might still be a powerful pick, especially with kind of how well Viper and Pays have been playing on the champion.
Obviously the banter that it's just never been the Gumayushi champion, so that would be a spicy fucking pick to be contested, right?
Yeah.
Because I tell you what, mate, logically, if he's too good on it, they might have to try and pick it away, and then you have to see a Gumayushi fucking Zeri game. That's a nightmare right there.
Faker is the better Azir player. between him and Zeka as well, so that should be a boon. Now, obviously, Chovy getting Azir back is huge for Gen G as well, because he is an insanely talented Azir player, and he plays it very differently than Faker. I mean, he's a side laning Azir player, right? So there are
Here's
factors.
An obvious one, Monty. Here's an obvious one. Being as people want Zeus to potentially be like the best top laner, well, you know what? His father is called Thorin, and every time he fucking goes to the playoffs against him, he goes, you know what, son? I might not be able to win worlds, but I can dominate you. He goes, puts him in his place. Because, mate, I actually, no joke, Thorin at this point in time has made a career, actually, of doing well against Zeus. It's crazy. That's his best fucking, like, matchup in the game, seemingly.
Thorin
it's
also,
crazy, isn't it?
Thorin also has big glow-ups in domestic playoffs. Like, he actually plays really well a lot of the time.
Agreed.
You know, the problem with Thorin is that so often he's just giving up solo kills in regular season games, and he team fights well regardless, and like he can dig himself out of that hole. But oftentimes in playoff games, he just doesn't have the hole to begin with, and he performs much better.
I actually think that's way spicy than people realise. Because remember, the people who didn't watch LCK Monty are just going to go like, but it's T1 who won Worlds. It's like, that's so far ago and irrelevant now that like, you don't realise this could be really fun. Especially because, as I say, logically, they could meet twice even. We could have 2 best-of-5s between them.
Yeah.
That's also why I love this format as well. So glad we have double elim in fucking LCK finally.
Yeah, I'm glad we have it
all those years.
I'm glad we have it only for the top 4, because otherwise, I don't need to see more Kwangdong at this point in time. Let's just put it that way, right? Whoever loses between KT and T+, I'm not super excited about seeing more games from them this split without any kind of roster changes or time to get better. But yeah, top 4 should be, I think, pretty exciting here. And yeah, I think Hanwha definitely all of a sudden coming in as more of a dark horse than we originally thought, with some strong performances to close out the split. I think it kind of took a long time for them to work out their shot calling.
About this, Monty. I also hadn't thought this through. Mate, imagine the Maldi if T1 was go to MSI. They'll probably get trucks. The dickheads whose team won Worlds and re-signed the players they wanted will probably send trucks. That's what I love about these fans. Low key, the thing I love the best about T1 stands is they're so nuts, man. They're so bonkers. I just like, they're so entitled as well. Like, they actually are, like, you know, the fan bases in every game, Yankees in baseball, Manchester United in football. Like, they actually have that entitlement where they actually think it's not that they had like great leaders and players. They just think like they're in the team, and of course they should be the best. You know what I mean?
They're blessed.
It's that weird entitlement. Yeah. Sort of is. Low-key, they actually do act like they're like the chosen people. Yeah.
They have the mandate of heaven to win.
What a world. What a world. I love it.
I don't think it's going to happen. Like, I think T1 will get their shit together in playoffs, but
they probably will. Come on, they're a pretty clutch team. They probably will win. Let's be real. Come on.
I mean, they probably will beat Hanwha. I don't think they're going to beat Gen G.
No, they're not going to do that, but they're going to beat Hanwha Life. It's probably like you would bet on that. If someone put a gun to your head, of course you'd pick T1 to win. Come on.
Yeah. But it is spicy. The Hanwha win over T1 really gave us something to work with heading into these playoffs, because it did feel kind of doomed up until that point in time. That it was just going to be another T1 versus Gen G final.
Even though being the GOAT isn't anything to do with head-to-head matchups, that's an area in tennis I find very irritating. By definition, being the GOAT is against the entire field of everyone you could play and then shadowboxed against history. That's hence why you're the greatest of all time. Even though that's not what I think is the thing, right? I know most fans do care about head-to-heads, Monty. They do care about how you do in big matches. All I'll say is this. If you are one of those people who thinks losing removes GOAT points, well, how are you going to sit back and just watch Faker get dusted by Chovy like 4 finals in a row, maybe 5 this year, and then go, the guy who got dusted is clearly the greatest player ever? Like, I didn't make that case. I think what he did before the Chovy era still puts him at number 1, unless I'm going with the rookie body of play angle. But if you're the ones who do that, if you're the ones who think losing makes you the bum, you've watched a lot of fucking Faker losses, and I'll tell you what, mate, I've been waiting for a while for this. Aside from this World's final, mate, the other thing that's sad is T1 is still clutch in general, but mate, in the finals, they're so whack still. Like, it's actually, you'd think these finals would have all been like 3-2, insane. No, the amount of times they've gotten convincingly beaten is crazy, isn't it? Like, these Gen G ones, they really have just been beaten straight up, like, just outplayed completely.
Yeah, a lot of these finals have been close. Yeah, they haven't been close.
Happen again.
And Gen G has come in as the favorite in the summer finals, But they came in as the underdog in the spring finals, and Gen.G won once as the underdog, and T1 wasn't able to close it out in spring last year.
People forget this. In spring, this is how history's rewritten, mate. In spring, it was fucking T1 and SKT, T1 and KT. It wasn't fucking Gen.G. Gen.G was supposed to be the Hanwha Life also ran, remember? They were supposed to be like the third team, but they just actually won the split. But everyone's rewritten that as like, well, of course they were number one. It's like, they weren't number one. What are you talking about? That wasn't even true. Remember, T1 was, by the way, remember, everyone forgets that. Last year, T1 was cooking in spring right up until the playoffs. Yeah. They just, for some reason, just went to pieces in the playoffs, didn't they?
I thought they were absolutely amazing in the spring of last year. I mean, the plays they were pulling off were nuts, like nuts.
Yep.
The coordination.
And similarly, at the beginning of this split, they had a few weeks that were looking fucking good too. They were looking pretty good. It's just they started to, as the middle of the split onwards, they started to look a bit more sus, a little bit dodgy, a little bit closer in some of the games. Some of the players are worse.
Yeah. It was a meta shift too, because that was like when that was when they were doing all their crazy experiments. Like first off with double ADCs in lane, and Riot obviously didn't like that and made some patch changes. But they keep bringing it back. It keeps working somehow. But yeah, I think these LCK playoffs are going to be fun. This first week probably not so great, but the weekend after should be very entertaining. Looking forward to that. Probably should talk about some LCS or LEC playoffs. LCS has been
a very... could all the regions for this one.
Of course.
Like I said, everything's popping now, yeah. By the way, I'm just going to put this out there. Everyone told me this was an open and shut case, that now that Cloud9's playing, they're just going to win this split completely. Mate, I'm so bored in this, right? If I told you, Monty, I took the nameplates off before the split begins, and I go, here's the result. One mid laner gets 0 kills. The other one has 0 deaths. Which one is Jojo Piona? Which one is Jensen? Yeah, it's weird how that works, isn't it? Weird how that works, isn't it? Yeah.
That was a wild series.
It was fucking mental, yeah. It was bonkers, wasn't it?
Extreme. I think I look, regardless of what you think about Cloud9, I don't think anybody really believed that it was going to end up as like 3-0 FlyQuest.
No, you would have thought even if FlyQuest won, it would be like 4 games, 5 games, like close matches, win a few. That's the incredible thing, is that they just fucking straight up just smashed them. What?
So I think what was the most consistently disappointing thing to me about Cloud9 in this series, Thorin, was that they actually just don't know how to play their compositions. Like, they actually don't know how to team fight or what their team fight win conditions are, even when they change them from game to game. So, for example, in the first game, they have Vi Gragas and they're playing into Senna Hui, and they just don't try to get flanks and deal with Hui or Senna with the Vi or the Gragas. Instead, they are blowing all of their cooldowns on Bwipo's Renekton, who has built tank in this game because he knows he has to be a frontliner, and they just don't try to get into the backline.
It's calling the target selection in these fights. It's insane, isn't it?
You know what's even more wild is the very next game. Okay, so they're like, fuck this. We can't flank, so we're just going to play front to back team fighting, hard engage. So what do we get? Okay, we got ourselves a Rumble. We got ourselves a Sejuani. We have ourselves a Nautilus. Okay, there's also a Yone and a Senna there. Who do you think is engaging these team fights, Thorin? If you guessed Yone ult, you would be correct. So instead of throwing out an equalizer or a Sejuani ult, it's just Jojo Pion. They stand around until Jojo Pion gets pissed off and like has to ult into the enemy team and die. And I'm like, how the fuck does Cloud9 end up with these compositions that are so conceptually easy to execute, and then nobody does anything until Jojo Pion just dashes in with Yone ult into the enemy team, and then they just start randomly throwing out other ults. Like, it is fucking pathetic to watch this team fight. And credit to FlyQuest too, because, I'll tell you one thing, Bwipo is a hell of a lot better at playing Gragas than Fudge is. You look at Bwipo's Gragas was fucking great in the last 2 games of this series.
Actually gets disrespected in LCS, because when people talk shit, I always want to go, but compared to who? Like, who's even, Impact? Who's even good aside from him? Like, it's the sniper guy, to be fair, is pretty good. Like, people always talk shit. Meanwhile, like, mate, it's Fudge. Again, this guy's been underwhelming for a while. I mean, usually he's better domestically, but
Well,
Never exactly been a world-class player, has he?
to Fudge's credit, he was coming off a stronger series in their last series that they played, right? Against 100 Thieves, he was very, very convincing. But I think, once we got into FlyQuest in this game, like the Twisted Fate gets banned, which is something that, one of his better champions. We also see things like the Jace getting banned. So they can, kind of remove some of the ranged AD champions that he's been playing. They take the Cassante out as well. And they force Fudge into a position where he just looked really uncomfortable. But, I think it's it's easier to blame Fudge in a lot of these circumstances. But really, it is just the coordination of this team that is absolute garbage. It's just absolute garbage.
Here's my problem with this, right? This is almost where I wish I just got to like call into fucking Power Spike or something. Because how many times is Dom going to tell me that Blabber is the GOAT fucking like jungler player? And like, first of all, his entire career since Inspired arrived on American shores has just been inspired. And by the way, even Closer used to do it. Just fucking pissing all over Blabber's face in playoff series. So I don't even get that one. I've always thought he was a good player, but for me, he's just like the really fucking like go crazy pop-off jungler. That has an obvious downside to it. He never had the control for me. And then the other angle is, I've been told for the last 3 years, by the way, this is the split where you saw how totally out of control those fans are. Berserker, mate, doesn't even have to play League of Legends anymore. He could just get up and have his hands chopped off, and every fan would still go, he's the best player on Cloud9 and the only ADC in the LCS. It's like, mate, yes, actually do it in the games. You don't get credit for past splits. You don't get credit for past splits. Like this one, he was not good in, mate. This is one actually where he did let himself down. He wasn't that like world-class player that's above the LCS. He wasn't. So actually, Cloud9's been fairly sort of scuffed this split. And you see this series, like it was the worst of Cloud9 manifested on all regards.
Yeah, I think JoJo is still impressive. I think JoJo actually had some very good laning phases here versus Jensen. I think particularly the when he was playing Yone into Karma, that he did really well. The problem with JoJo is that, sure, he ends up with 0 kills, but like he has to have his team engaged for him. Like they just weren't engaging. Like somebody has to go in so he can follow up with his ultimate and use like his Soul Unbound. But if nobody's going to actually throw the crowd control in there and set up the play, he can't set up the play. He needs somebody to pass the fucking ball to him. And so when he just kind of like takes a shot anyway, then he eats shit for it. But it was really on the rest of his team to, start those engages with the compositions that they were running. So I think it's super disappointing. I think Jojo Pion actually had a less bad series than his, not great series, obviously, but a less bad series than his scoreline would indicate. But he wasn't getting any fucking help.
The obvious question to me is this. On paper, the roster looks really good for Cloud9, but after actually seeing it play, this team lacks some sort of shot calling. Like, you look at the players, where would it even come from? You know what I mean? Because the problem I have with this is, I agree, actually. I think Jojo Pion mechanically is a good player. I actually think generally he's good. But I'll tell you what, in EG, I do think he had the dream team. He had Inspired as his jungler, and he had fucking Peter Dunn as his coach. Like, they're going to take care of, like, how to set you up, the brain aspect of the game. In this team, it just looks like a bunch of good players who don't have cohesion. Like you say, mate, if you can't call a 5v5 front-to-back team fight in the LCS, just quit League of Legends. That's all LCS is for like fucking 10 years. Like, you can't do that. What's wrong here? Like, how am I supposed to, like, put it this way, right now, I'm supposed to believe it's probably going to happen that this team's going to MSI. What the fuck is this team going to do at MSI? Bro, they're going to get murked. It's only the top teams going, boys. Like, they're going to actually smash.
If we're talking about teams getting murked at MSI, like FlyQuest is going to get murked at MSI. And they've already qualified. The problem with FlyQuest is that Masu and Busio still do whack-ass shit in the laning phase. And if you are FlyQuest and you try and play into a team like BLG or T1 that kind of like drive the dagger in deeper by winning through bot lane, you are going to just straight up lose the games if you do the things that they do in the bot lane. Like, you will never recover. The snowball will just crush you because Jun and Owner know how to play around winning bot lanes. So I think it's going to be good experience for Masu and Busio, but I don't think that Inspired's going to be able to bail them out like you can in the LCS. And credit to Inspired, he had a great I think he had a great series.
He's a monster. Yeah.
I think he had a great
By the
series.
way, a lot of people are like, some people are vibing with it, but some people are bristling that Inspired started to actually sort of like brand himself a bit more. And he said all these.
I think it's great.
By the way, it's totally deserved. This guy right now is the fucking king of the LCS. Like, this is the best player in the LCS. But by the way, it might even have been for the last like 2 years. This guy's mega. And I even love that. Like, if you want to talk shit, do it when you're actually the guy who actually just outclasses people like this. And also, it's not like he's saying it just from raw skill, guys. This guy puts in mad hours watching VODs of like Asian junglers and pro views and stuff. Like, he earned his status. He actually earned to say, I'm the best player and all these other junglers aren't as good. Like, I think it's dope. I think it's fucking sick. And by the way, now the storyline for the final when they rematch is spicy as fuck, innit? That's going to be fucking sick, mate.
I mean, I pray to God that Liquid is not in the finals. Like, I cannot watch... this Team Liquid team. Okay, let me reframe this in my mind really quickly. Credit to their coaching staff for somehow getting this far.
It's restarted there. But come on.
Shout out to Spawn.
Okay, I like it. Yeah, sure.
Because it is illegal that this Team Liquid team has gotten this far. I mean, 100 Thieves were also incredibly fraudulent, and we knew that. But Team Liquid
just only did it because of the sniper guy, mate. That guy really was the revelation of this split. Like, fair play to all the hype. He was good. Like, but without that guy, they wouldn't even have been relevant, really. Like, Quid did what he could, but one player isn't enough. Come on.
And Yun has stepped up in playoffs, but you know, they are not playing with a full deck here, Team Liquid. Like, they are very, I think, predictable in the draft phases, because again, we just get to see a million APA, Aurelion Sol, and Talia and Ziggs games for some reason. And 100 Thieves, guess they just didn't feel like banning out these champions. Yun has been, you know, Smolder, the kind of like Team Liquid turtle until the other team throws strategy has been very effective when they have Smolder and Aurelion Sol and Ziggs in the game, because Ziggs allows you to turtle very well, and then Aurelion Sol and Smolder, NA teams don't push advantages hard enough, so you don't actually fall 8k gold behind. So when Smolder hits 225 stacks, you just win the game for free.
So you mean if I cynically was to just ban them against them then, though, then that style wouldn't work? Shit, what should I do? Probably just give it, just let it through. That's the worst thing, isn't it, about Liquid as well? When you actually are cynical like you, and you know that some of their players aren't that good, you really could just draft like a cunt against them, essentially, and just not even let them play their game. It's actually plausible. Well, just give them the tools.
I also think it's just kind of outrageous that we ended up with LCS all on 14.5 before the Smolder nerfs come through, whereas like the Asian regions are all going to be on later patches. Yep. So what we're going to have is, because Smolder is so disruptive to game states, we're going to get a bunch of, you know, it's possible that we get some fucking fraud teams at MSI from LCS simply because, you know, Team Liquid is the Smolder abusers. And if Smolder's not there, and frankly, even if Smolder is there and unchanged, like in a world where he didn't get nerfed into the grave, which he does get nerfed into the grave on 14.6, even in the world where that doesn't happen, we've seen Asian teams at least somewhat be able to handle the Smolder. Now we can take the advantage of the Nongshim T1 game where it took them like a million Elder Drakes and Barons in order to close out, and Smolder had 700 stacks or whatever it was, and it was crazy, and it still shows how bullshit that champion is. But a lot of teams have figured out comps and ways of flanking, ways of playing into the back line, ways of accelerating the game where you're all of a sudden 7, 8, 9, 10,000 gold up by the time Smolder gets his stacks, and then you're capable of playing a game of League of Legends. Now, I think it's ridiculous that it can be like an even game state at an 8k gold deficit. That's just fucking stupid.
It is.
But it's gone now, mercifully, and it's going to be gone for Asian playoffs. But what Smolder has done is it has allowed a bunch of upsets to occur around the world that, you know, without Smolder probably wouldn't be happening. I don't think even the biggest Team Liquid stan could look me in the eye and say that Liquid would have done this well in playoffs without Smolder. It's a crutch. that they've been using.
I mean, you literally took one of your worst carry players and gave him like the strongest fucking like carry from behind champion in the game. Like it's like Riot wanted Team Liquid to come third. Like that's what it looks like by the game devs.
And Spawn's been in LCS long enough that he knows he can get away. He knows he can get away with the giga scaling like TSM used to do. He knows that people don't punish. So why not just draft Double Dragon and fucking play it out?
And it's always going to be more effective in playoffs when people are nervous to make the early game plays. It's always going to work.
I mean, especially with young rookies on the other team. And like, Sniper has been struggling a little bit, and Impact is the playoffs guy, right? And Impact has been incredibly consistent. And why I credit the shot call, or why I credit Team Liquid so much in their coaches, the shot calling has been very good. So here's the other thing. Core has looked better in these playoffs. Core JJ has looked a lot better, especially on one of his signature champions over the course of his career, the Rel. He's looked a lot better. He's also been able to play the Tahm Kench, which is another one of his signature picks.
I'm still there. I'm just grabbing something quickly. Keep going.
Yeah. I mean, I think what's actually egregious, guys, is that, Team Liquid can pick the Smolder Tahm Kench lane and get 18 kills onto Yun Smolder, because Smolder Tahm Kench is like probably the most passive lane in the game. And it is so shit that the fact that you can't win that game is appalling. Like that lane should be pushed into oblivion. And because it's NA, it doesn't happen. So it's just a bummer. But Team Liquid continues to win. I really am hoping, Thorin, that they do not beat Cloud9. Because the TL FlyQuest finals, you guys are like, oh, it was such a banger the first time it happened. TL versus FlyQuest. That shit's not happening again. It's not going to happen again. I'm
saying it right now. There's only two outcomes if Cloud9 loses to Team Liquid. One, the coaching staff of Team Liquid is even more insane than I knew. And two, I would have serious questions about the coaching staff of Cloud9.
What coaching staff?
Like, look at your fucking roster.
It's just Mithy.
Listen, he's my boy, but look at your roster, bro. This is supposed to be like an auto final with this roster.
Yeah, I think that is actually, you hit on one of the main problems with Cloud9 is that they cut their coaching staff down to nothing in order to afford the players that they have on their roster. They just have Mithy. It's just one dude. And you compare that to a lot of the other LCS coaching staffs, and it's very small. It really is turning back the clock on LCS to have one coach on a team has not been something that's happened for a very long time. And by the way, guys, before you say Hai has not been active in the game for years. He was literally off doing nothing really to do with League of Legends. He's a manager for the team. I'm sure he helps sort out arguments between players, but his game knowledge is not, like, he's not the giga shot caller that you think he is, and he hasn't been for a long ass time.
I just love the idea that it's like, can we really know if Yamato Cannon's a good coach? Hi, I used to like watching him play mid lane in 2014. He would be an amazing coach. Where are these intrusive voices coming from? What the fuck is this? Is this the demons again? Am I schizophrenic? What are you talking about, you lunatic?
Yeah, and part of the coaching job is creating.
Wait, if that logic worked, if being a great player, a cerebral great player worked, Monty, then you do know LCK would be the most goated league ever, guys. Look at the coaches. It's like fucking dandy, like Score, like it's like the greatest minds ever. And by the way, some of them are just all right. Some of them are great. Some of them are just all right as coaches, Some are just all right.
I mean, that's why they brought Reach into Najin in the early days, was because they were bringing in Blue War players who could like have that cerebral, like calm quality and like understand what it took to be a champion in terms of practice. Look, I think Hai probably does do some level of coaching in that he solves interpersonal discussions, and I'm sure he's a good conversation facilitator.
Of course.
But I don't think he's actively probably participating to a lot of. I could be wrong, but my sense is that he's probably not actively participating in their game strategy. I guess they have Vagar V2, but he's off-site. So they have one coach who's actually there with them, and that's Mithy. Meanwhile, Reaper just jobless again after his stint in Japan last year.
I don't know why that is. It's weird, isn't it? I'm amazed he doesn't get picked up by, what, he can only be in top teams or nothing. Like, why can't he be in LEC or something? You know what I mean? Bring him in. This guy's mega.
Well, I think he has a lot of money, and he doesn't want to be in bottom teams. I think that's the problem. He probably has offers. I just don't think he wants them.
Here's what you guys now have to actually consider, as I alluded to before. So before, because everyone in their brain just took it for granted Cloud9's winning the split. Well, now there's a very good chance FlyQuest can win the split. Bro, if Jensen wins LCS with 3 different orgs, I mean, sit the fuck down, mate. What did your boy Bjergsen do? Oh, just TSM. My bad, just TSM. Okay.
So, what, you don't remember the disastrous $7 million Team Liquid super team?
The team that, by the way, said no to Jensen. By the way, shout out to all these orgs. Because remember, Team Liquid and Cloud9 have both said, actually, that's enough Jensen for me. They've both done that. They've both done it. I mean, Cloud9, fair enough, when they were desperate, brought him back, popped a little, throw the trophy on the cabinet. Then they told him, you can fuck off again. Back on your bike. Back on your bike. So it's all good. It's all good. As I told him all those years ago, luckily he understood. They'll never give you the credit, mates. You just got to win in spite of it. You just got to win in spite of it. Then they can't say shit, can they? Then you just have the title.
Yeah, and I thought his team fighting performance in the playoffs was really good as well. But you really do see the veteran shot calling of players like Jensen and Inspired and Butbo, coming through, because they're
mid up in these playoff series. Yeah, they looked like they were way more focused than those regular season games for sure, mate.
It's really not that surprising though. I mean, because these players know that they can turn it on when it's necessary.
Yes.
And, fuck it, regular season doesn't mean that much as long as you get to the playoffs. They ended it. I mean, was it really that bad? They ended in first place in the split, so who gives a fuck?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I don't know, FlyQuest right now, it was a very thorough dismantling of Cloud9. I was just so disappointed by the way that Cloud9 was playing the game, and they couldn't understand to engage with a fucking Rumble or Sejuani ult, that I have no idea. I mean, frankly, Team Liquid is a much better at teamwork and coordination and understanding win conditions. So it's not impossible that with the right drafts that they actually win this game against Cloud9. Because Cloud9 is so bad at team fighting that they will give Team Liquid infinite time to scale.
Here's the problem, though, Monty. Here's the problem. I was talking shit on Cloud9. What the fuck would Team Liquid do at MSI? that would be like fucking the goggles. They do nothing. I don't want to see that, man. That'll be so embarrassing if they go to MSI. They're gonna get broke.
We already saw APA at an international event at Worlds last year. I kind of am into that, but I'm the sick fuck who wants to watch what Chovy and Knight do to APA.
Oh no! Listen, there's a part.
Try and play a really insole motherfucker.
Yeah, you have to realize I come from the old days of Quake, mate. The best demos are the ones where they go in the public server. You don't all the noobs as a god. Yeah, of course. That's easily the best. You don't want to watch them play an evenly match, guy. It'll be really boring chess match. I want to see fucking John Wick. I want to just go ham on him. Yeah, of course.
I mean,
by the way, low key, I would love it so much if someone like Team Liquid or Cloud9 in the first round of upper bracket just draws Gen G. That would be the game I want to see. Them or BLG. I want to see the Giga Stomp. I want to see the game again where you get 0 kills, you just get utterly crushed from minute 1 to the end.
I want to see APA just start trying to trash talk Chovy, and he just types Mom Go Sky in in all chat versus Chovy.
And also the reason why that wouldn't work, guys, is if you actually knew how to read Korean, the shit they type in Korean is way wilder in solo queue. If you think APA is spicy, if Chovy wouldn't even give a fuck, it wouldn't even touch him if he actually translated what he said. He wouldn't care. They do say the shit I hope your mum dies or something. What the fuck? That's what they're like over there. They're insane, mate. It's mad.
They also like to say I fucked your mom, stuff like that. Anything to do with insulting your mom is a big hit in Korean solo queue. Big hits.
Even though the joke is that also was the thing in America if you played Counter-Strike or Call of Duty, but we always took it as joking, don't we? If someone's like, "Oh, I fucked you up," say, "Oh, whatever," but who gives a fuck? They're taking it to heart.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of quaint if you're from the West. You're like, that's all you got? I fucked your mom? All right.
There's a bunch of memes like this that people made over the years where it would be like, oh, I've just logged into Call of Duty. You won't believe it. Apparently my mum's just been cheating with all these fucking teams. That's the joke that you used to always make back in the day. Because it was just the go-to, of course, when it was the instant insult they all went to. The macro that they had built in.
Yeah, it is pretty funny though, to see some of the insults in Korean solo queue, because they can't just bounce off you as a Westerner.
Oh, of course. It's why actually every now and then I actually have to have that moment where I realize how different cultures are, specifically because of the Koreans. Like when they get like butthurt that you say like Faker's not the best, you're like, oh shit, I forgot it was like that. Fuck yeah. He's like your god emperor in a way, isn't he? And you have to, it's like, oh fuck, I thought I was doing sports analysis just based on this year. My bad. Guess I didn't realize that I've said the emperor's got no clothes. It's like, fucking hell, I thought I was doing sports analysis. By the way, should we do another region?
Yeah, we'll switch over right now. But before we do that, we just talked about Cloud9 and the fudge factor. And the fudge factor is very disappointing. But what's not disappointing is Factor itself. Factor meals, of course. Thanks a lot for you guys for supporting us by trying out Factor. If you haven't, now's a great time to do it. And huge savings, 50% off, right? And what happens is they deliver never frozen fresh meals to your house in a box that has been refrigerated, has ice packs in there. And all you have to do is heat them up in 2 minutes, and you have 35 different options to choose from every week. They do have rotations of meals, so it doesn't get old. You have different diets you can go to. So Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto, if you're into that, plus 60 add-ons like pancakes, smoothies, breakfast, snacks, this kind of stuff that they can put in your box as well. And it's cheaper than takeout, obviously. So if you guys find yourselves, you're like, oh man, I don't want to go to the store. I don't want to cook today. If you just have a few of these in your fridge, makes it a lot easier and healthier too than just ordering takeout. You're not paying, especially if you're American, all those tips and delivery charges, everything like that. It just shipped to you, box full of food. It's great. Less expensive than takeout. Every meal is dietitian approved to be nutritious and delicious. Head to factormeals.com/LFN50 and use code LFN50 to get 50% off. That's code LFN50 at factormeals.com/LFN50 to get 50% off. So thank you to Factor for supporting Summoning Insight. I'm going to be back in the States for the month of May, Thorin, and I'm going to get myself some Factor while I'm back. So I'm excited about that. By the way, guys, the same company that does HelloFresh. I used HelloFresh for a long time, and I can tell you they do great stuff. So excited to get on board the Factor train myself when I'm back in America for a while before I come to Korea. So shall we talk about LEC? It is terrible. Holy shit. Some of these games this week have been misery.
What's wild is the vibe's still just like the last split. The teams that are good has changed, but it's still a complete mess of a region. And just like last split, G2 sort of seems to fuck around in the BO1s. They don't seem locked in because why did they need to be? As long as you make it to this next portion, they're going to run over everyone. But mate, what I loved is this. I was telling everyone on my Discord, I can't lose with the teams that are at the bottom. Because once I saw, wait a minute, it's either going to be Carmine Corp or Mad Lions who's going to miss the... Oh, baby. And mate, Mad Lions almost made it themselves in Carmine Corp. Think about how glorious this is, guys. Think about all the fucking stupid narratives that, like, Yamato was the problem. Like, if you fire him, the drafts. Look at the drafts, though, bro. You know what? I'm going to say this, Monty, about Carmine Corp. It's a bigger point. It's a bigger point to be made. Because the number one set of check stealers in fucking esports right now are general managers because they don't get fired somehow. Somehow these guys never get fired, even when their job is to make decisions in hiring people. So they hire someone, he goes bad at the job, they have to fire him. They hire another guy, he's bad at the job, I have to fire him. Eventually you fire the guy who's doing the hiring. He's bad at his job because what is going on in these orgs? Like Carmine Corp, by the way, right now, looks like from top to bottom, it is a shit show. There is nobody who understands how to build a team, nobody who can coach a team, and most of the players fucking suck. Like this is just trash, mate. I even knew they'd win slightly more games, but I also knew they'd be irrelevant. What is this?
I made the joke on Twitter, Thorin, that I have firsthand experience that being a popular personality doesn't necessarily make you good at winning professional League of Legends games. Right? Because famously the joke is about Renegades and how terrible Renegades was as a roster. But, I will also say, like Kometo, I was winning
take off
in tier 2.
Off the screen.
I was winning in tier 2, Thorin. I was winning in tier 2. Like, remember that Renegades got into LCS by being promoted. And Kometo was winning, effectively the same thing, which is, if we still had promotion relegation, he would win the thing that would get him into the promotion tournament, right? But it's one thing to win at the amateur level, and it's another thing to continue that winning into the professional level. And what we have seen is that, we all knew Yamato wasn't the problem, but Karmine Corp has now ended the season with the exact same record that they had with Yamato, with exactly the same fucking problems, except, Thorin, on the eye test, they look worse than they did. Because at least they had better drafts. At least they had stronger early games. A lot of the times they're just losing just straight up from like minute 1 in some of these games. And they still...
They were in most of those early games. Last split, of course.
And even when they're in the games, they still throw in the same ways that they did. The players that we know are bad are still there. And Kometo continues to hold on to Seiken because he's his buddy and because he made him a promise or feels that he needs to have loyalty to him. My question for you is this, Thorin. What does it take for these fans to actually get mad at Karmine Corp and hold Kometo and the management responsible? Because these are the people who are going out there every week and making the ruckus in the studio. Aren't they angry at this point in time that this team looks like such dog shit and that the org is not doing anything and fixed exactly 0 of the problems, which everybody fucking told them, but the fan base was just in denial about?
That's the problem, though, with the fans of your team, not just being a fans of sport, but the fans of influencers and personalities, because obviously they still love the personalities. They still love the fucking we're part of this guy's stream. So I think the problem is that overlap protects the management. Because here's the stupidest thing about this, Monty. Here's how you know how different fan bases are. You know what? I've memed on the T1 fans a lot, but in a fucked up way. I don't approve of the idea you'd actually send a truck or whatever. I think that's a bit, because I also do think, as Richard's always pointed out, it's almost an intimation of potentially violence even behind that, of sort of it's more than just I disagree. It's sort of post on a website. There's something intimidating about it. You know what I mean? I do think there's a part of that. It is a bit like that famous thing where they say in Brazilian esports, come to Brazil. It's you're not saying come to Brazil so I can have a fucking picnic, are you? We all know what you're implying.
You're not going to hand me a caparina when I get there. You're going to try and shoot me.
The implication is it's intimidation. You're going to fuck me up if I come there. It's like saying see you at LAN, like we used to say in UK Counter-Strike. It's not because I'm going to shake your hand, so I'm going to slap you in this in Algiana. So I will just say, the one thing that I actually can respect, though, is at least T1 fans do actually live up to the idea, however misguided, that T1 is supposed to be excellent and they demand excellence. Why are Karmine Corp fans giving a pass to their team after all these years of big talk about how they were going to come to LEC, Monty? They've been winning all these EU Masters with different rosters. You come to the LEC and you're the worst team 2 splits in a row and you don't even have an issue with the management. Bruh, are you even a fan of sports? As far as I can tell, you are just a fan of the name Karmine Corp. You don't even want to be good at the game. This is exactly when you say, hey, this isn't good enough. By the way, now even more so the last split, Monty. Now it's 2 splits, and this is the split that gets you an MSI. This is a split that batters for points. So it's actually way more egregious to be bad in this split than the first one. Of course. And yet they're just chilling. Because Yamato isn't there, they're just chilling. Everyone's just fine, apparently.
And now, Thorin, you lost your opportunities. You could have had Trimby, potentially. If you offered him enough money.
If you think how Upset played this split, mate, if you just the Trimby change, I think they would have won a couple of these games. No, there was a Zeri game he had. There's a couple of games I think they could have won if they'd have had Trimby.
Targamas was just criminally bad this week.
He just does nothing, mate.
These teams, if you actually just look at the way that Karmine Corp plays, they really just have no synergy and they just don't give a fuck. I literally this week had to watch, in the Heretics game, they can't even engage properly. So they have a Karma speed boost and Targamas is playing Rakan and Bo is on Jarvan. And basically, Targamas and Bo just take turns trying to engage. So Targamas goes in with Rakan ult, then leaves the fight. And then after that, Bo goes in with Jarvan ult. They actually just can't coordinate a singular engage. And in the final game of Split, I'm not going to read too much into the game versus BDS because it looked to me like literally everybody had fucking mentally checked out of that game. Like, I think they were just trying to lose. Like, they just didn't nobody gave a fuck anymore. Bo was like,
no, it looked like
Bo was just like playing terrible. Targamas was just like in the river as Braum, dying randomly 24/7. Like, Targamas was literally, I was watching this on my stream and I was just tilting out of my mind because Targamas is like in bot river with 2.5 minutes left for Drake. Upset is in base and Saken is on his way to mid lane. So he has nobody and and Bo is on his red buff. So he knows he has no pressure. He has no reason to contest for vision in the middle of the river. He just walks into the river and dies. I'm like, what the fuck is this guy even doing? And he did this like multiple times. I mean, some of these games were just like criminally bad. And if we want to criticize Yamato, let's talk about the draft that they had versus BDS. Okay, so we draft this composition. Remember Adam, how he plays Olaf? Now, R5 Olaf has been a kind of ace in the hole for a lot of teams. I've mentioned this many times on this show. It is very powerful. Like we've seen like D+ pull it out, where if you have low mobility carries and you have, especially when you have Karma. Now, they didn't have Karma this game. If you have low mobility carries, you can actually just pull off an R5 Olaf because you're not blind picking the Olaf. And even though he wasn't a bad matchup versus Jace, by the time you get to the mid and late game, he just presses R and just runs all over to Leah and Jace and Smolder, and there's nothing you can do about it, and he just assassinates your backline. And like, of all the teams in the world, why would you just not suspect BDS, Adam, to fucking do this? Like, surely Adam is just sitting there in the draft, just waiting for R5, rubbing his little Adam hands together. You know, he says, oh, they did it. They did. Pick me, Olaf. That's what he says. It's so free, guys. It's so fucking free. So Yamato would never, is my point. Yamato would never do this. This is such a fucking easy trap to avoid, in my opinion. And yet, here we are, just walking into it. And this is also in spite of the fact that Cabashard also plays Olaf and should know that this is coming.
Mad, isn't it? It's not mad.
I don't know. But to diagnose this team, like, Upset has been underwhelming, but I think he just gave up inside. You know, one thing that I'm never thrilled with Upset is like when the team starts to go badly, he starts to just phone it in a lot of the time. But Targamas has been terrible. Saken has again been terrible. These guys are just actively bad at this point in time. Bo, as we know from his time on Vitality, he will do really well, and then when hope is gone, he just runs it down. Like, he does this.
By the way, I'll always give him as well a slight bit of extra leeway, which is he's a total foreigner in an alien region to him. Like, understandably, you'd be even more effective if things go badly in that scenario. Like, I don't blame him in that respect. It does suck that he hasn't made it aware. Here's the other thing I want to say very quickly as well, Monty. One of the things that's really showed me, as usual, that bozos don't even fucking watch the game is, you know, that thing I always bring up, which is every time Perks is bad, they talk, and suddenly they're talking about, like, the old G2 Perks as though he was like Trophy, he's like a lane god or something. I'm like, he was never that player. This is like a straw man. Similarly, right, they do this thing now. You'll have heard it because you've made content where they go, Milky Way, so you mean this is the same thing as with that Bo guy? No, you're not listening to what we're saying. What we said about Bo was he had insane mechanics, and he was like essentially he was like the guy who just went forwards all the time, and he was a psychopath. That's the opposite. We're saying Milky Way is actually insanely like fucking like his timing and decision making is part of it. That was never something we said Bo had. What are you talking about? That's such a shit straw man to bring up. The difference is Bo was a mega talent. The Milky Way guy is like, the joke is already like the complete package, it feels like, on like fucking
he shot calls. And you can tell you can tell Milky Way is shot calling because so many of the fights they take are dependent around his engages.
Even he clearly asked him to, yes.
Yeah. It's him and Life are obviously the people who are shot calling on this roster and controlling, you know, what happens on the map. But it's also just his pathing is very intelligent. Like, Milky Way sets up game states. And it's incredibly impressive, especially for a rookie jungler to be doing all of this. He's super valuable, by the way, because
Whereas here's the analogy, Monty. The point of Bo to me always was to be the tip of the spear. He's like the super aggro mechanics guy. You push in there and then you all follow up and win the fight. Like, that's why the idea he's in a team in this one where people don't follow up. I can't handle it, mate.
Or don't shot call either.
The saddest thing of all to me is this, bro. If you got this, if you took Bo and gave him Niski as his mid laner and fucking Mac as his coach, he'd be the MVP of the LEC because they would just follow up on all the players for fuck's sake. And he'd have someone to hold his hand as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Because he looks totally ineffective in this team. Because as you say, like there's nothing left for him, mate. And at the end, he obviously gets bombed out. I get it. He gets bombed out.
Here's a thought experiment for you. What happens if Bo is kicked out of this roster? Like, does Vitality pick him up? You know, maybe it's not the best
sick pickup, wouldn't it?
Maybe it's not the best synergy with VTO, but with the coaching staff they have, it might actually work.
They could claim that player.
And Vitality has been the worst player. Like Douglas has been the worst player on Vitality this year, even though he's gotten better recently. He's been better recently, but especially in winter he was bad. I mean, it's not like Yzma's doing great on SK, so Bo could theoretically go there as well. I mean, Bo is still going to be considered a major upgrade, especially as his English keeps getting better. I mean, I listen to these Carbine Corp comms, and again, Bo is the one who's probably talking the most, but that doesn't mean that his communication is effective, not because of language differences, but because I just don't think he's that shot caller guy. Like, I just don't.
Oh, no. Come on.
He spends a lot of his time.
Seems like he's a very strong macro sense, Monty.
He also is very non-committal in comms, where he's asking questions a lot. Like, should we go in? He's not really the guy who's like, somebody needs to be there being like, Bo, I need you to do this thing when I do this thing, and then he will do it. I'm pretty sure. I don't think he wants to be the guy making the plan. That's the sense I get. He's like actively trying to ask other people to make plans in comms, and nobody's there. And also, like, frankly, being a jungler at the professional level is highly dependent on your synergy with your support. And fucking Targamas is terrible and doesn't talk. So.
Oh, no, he has whack solo lanes and a support that doesn't talk, and he's in a region not speaking his native language, and he tries to go in all the time. Like, that's the recipe for a really bad split, mate. That's how you get to look really terrible. Because you're just going to be on your own all day long with no help.
Yeah. So,
the problem is this, Monty. The one area I will actually admit this now. The one area we missed about Bo was this. He was playing with Doinby. And you can't understate that, but we did in a way. Doinby is the ultimate player to do exactly all the things we just described. So essentially, he was filling in all the inexperience and macro logic. Okay, he was given that all. So without that, we thought that Perks would be that. Obviously, that is a failure of Perks, in my opinion, last year in Vitality. He couldn't help Bo in that regard. But this just hasn't worked, the combos we've made him with so far, unfortunately.
I mean, I'm kind of horny on this idea of him to Vitality now, because I need to see the actual psychopathy that would be Hylissang and Bo playing together.
Mate, the good news is that at least both go in. So you what? Both go in, though, wouldn't they? And also, now you can only kill one target at a time, Monty. So which one are you picking? Hilly's going in, Bo's going in too. So
I would love to see that, frankly. I think that shit would be hilarious.
Yes.
That would be the dream. But I don't think, frankly, if I'm Carmine Corp, I don't let this guy go, because even though he does get tilted by being on losing teams for long enough, and you see it in his gameplay, and he starts to perform worse. And I mean, he wasn't great in their last game of the split, that's for sure. I think you need to fix a couple of the other problems with this roster first before you kind of throw Bo out.
There's what people haven't thought about, Monty. They all love to do this thing where they rewrite last year's Vitality. And this is why I know you're all bums. Because have you ever noticed how I expose and make fun of people for things that are true, but you have to make up things and lie to make fun of people? That means you didn't have a basis. So last year's Vitality, I'm told, Monty, was one of the worst teams ever, and they were just shit the whole year. But then when I watched them in the winter split, they were actually doing pretty well in the BO1s, then they fell apart. Then in the spring split, they finished third, ahead of G2, by the way. Does anyone know? Does no one remember that detail, by the way? That Vitality last spring finished ahead of G2 in the playoffs. So we all going to pretend that didn't happen. It did happen. Then in summer, they were complete shit. It was only in summer, Monty, they fell apart and were shit. Right? Carmine Corp now has done 2 10th place finishes. And as of right now, with 0 roster moves announced, there's no reason to believe they won't be bottom 2 in the next split. This is actually going to be one of the worst org runs ever in esports, mate. This is mental. Not least because no one I know had this team ranked 10th or 9th in the pre-season rankings. Everyone thought they had some good players. So this is actually going to be one of the most underwhelming like entries to LEC ever, mate.
I mean, Kaiser's available.
By the way, I would take that in a heartbeat. Of course.
Yeah, I mean, Kaiser's available. They could bring Yamato back because I think Yamato is still useful
the worst thing
for
is,
them.
Sadly, he would even probably do that because he's just such a fucking cool guy. But I hate it. I hate the idea you never even consider coming back, you know.
Well, I think if he wants to make the money that's on his contract, he has to come back if they ask him. Otherwise, he would give up his contract. So if he wants the money and he wants the job.
Still make a whole bunch of money while he's sat on the bench store, right? How does that work? If they tell you you're activated again, do you have to play? Is that how it works?
I think he probably has to coach again if they ask him to come back and do the job, right? Well, I would imagine, basically they've said like, well, we can't terminate your contract, but we also don't want you. So you're just going to chill and make money. And, don't say anything bad about the team. And I think if they were like, hey, come back, he has to come back.
From now on, every time this team sucks, I'm just going to call him Camel Toe, not Kameto. I'm just going to say Camel Toe. There you go. There you go. That's all I'm going to do. Because all I see is a bunch of fucking lips flapping on stream.
Wow.
I also just can't handle how whack it is. Like, bro, if you this whole thing, remember, in theory, Monty, these guys should be even more motivated than T1 fans. They're going on a nationalism tip of like, so surely logically you're making France look stupid here. You're making them look like bombs. By the way, this team was like the fucking team that won EU Masters a bazillion times. You're making the LFL look stupid now. Like, is this not a big deal to you guys? I'd hate it if my team was in 10th place. I hate it. I don't even like the fucking team.
I mean, I think like there are definitely approaches that you could take to this roster. If you were actually able to swap out some of the players, that might be interesting. But I mean, it's really just the roster changes they didn't make, Thorin, that are so puzzling. Like Niski is on SK because Carmi. I mean, I'm pretty sure if Niski got a Carmine Corp offer, he would have taken it over SK. Like, I think that's pretty fair to say, especially since he's personal friends with Yamato. And yet he felt loyalty to Seiken, so they didn't get Niski. I don't know why Targamas is still on this roster, but they just passed by on Trimby just sitting there when they could have signed Trimby potentially before, he got an offer himself, and Trimby certainly still looks good. So now, would Trimby have gone to this dumpster fire roster if he had another choice? Maybe not. But as far as I know,
I actually think he would. I think
really?
He would have said yes.
Wow.
I mean, you get play with upset. Like maybe he thinks he can turn it around. And you mean like after the first split? I don't think it's impossible.
After this,
by the way, the thing I'm worried about is I actually do think they're just going to run the same roster back again, mate, and just fucking tank it again. Just do it again. Do it again. Because the other one, by the way,
one more time,
what, mate, the other team to talk about, also a team that's been dog shit, is fucking Rogue again. Mate, I told you, it wasn't just some like bias because I'm friends with Godward, etc. I told you this team is like anti-GMing, mate. That's why I made that joke on Twitter. Like the Rogue GM is fucking Dr. Yue from Dune. He's the fucking sabotager. He's inside, opening up all the gates and telling the Harkonnens to come in. Like, what the fuck is going on with the GMing? They had the champions 2 years ago, guys, and they GM'd their way down to the 9th best team in the LEC. And that's after, by the way, they got really lucky in the offseason to be able to retain Larson after he had all these offers. Like, mate, this team just doesn't want to win. They just fucking can't win. What a shit. Also, by the way, here's another thing, Monty. It's one thing to come 9th or 10th. The Rogue games are so shit to watch. It is appalling. Even Carmine Corp has the odd exciting game. You know what I mean? Or a game where they're in it. Rogue games are just boring from the first minute to the end. They're just bad.
So people will point out the win.
It's bad that they beat G2. It's funny that they're able to do that every time and then do nothing else. They sold their soul for that, didn't they?
They did have a more exciting early game, but even in that win versus G2, they didn't look particularly good. And also, even though they also, against G2, I mean, G2 drafted a composition that literally does nothing and has no damage until Smolder hits 225 stacks. Like, it was like that draft was fucking criminal from G2, in my opinion. Like, they actually just don't win any skirmishes in the early game because your composition is Tank, Rek'Sai, Ivern, Karma, Smolder, and Rel. It's shit. Like, it's actually shit. So basically, they just lose all the they opt into skirmishes in the early game, lose those skirmishes. And even then, Thorin, Rogue almost doesn't win that game once Smolder hits 225 stacks. It is eerily close. And they have one damage source. Eventually, they figure out, like, it's also the trades that they make. So they literally gave up Orianna, Senna, and Nautilus for free to Rogue. And Finn, to his credit, also had some very good flanks and like had some good flash Qs on the Aatrox, which won fights. But it is criminal that you can give up Ori, Senna, Nautilus to a blue side team. Like, you get Ori or you get Senna. You can't have both of them. What the fuck, man? So, I mean, G2, I still think G2 is an excellent team, but that draft was like pretty fucking troll. Like, people will start to panic about G2 in general, also because of the Vitality game. But
who's worried? Come on, mate. Come on.
It's best of ones.
The joke is, it's like that meme that everyone loves. You know, the one of the person playing PlayStation, Monty, and he's sat up like this, but then when he cares, like, his little brother starts winning. That's all G2 does. In regular seasons like this, and then they go, right, time to fuck them all up, and then win the league. Of course they are. Listen, by the way, as someone who's an analyst, I hate the idea that before an entire playoff bracket, I'm calling the winner definitely going to win. But this is another one where G2, just give them the fucking trophy already. Everyone's playing for second. This is silly. This is just silly, especially because once they get to BO5s, it's over, mate. None of these teams right now could beat G2 in the best of five. I don't even care about Fnatic. Even though we're going to hype them up, they're not going to do it, mate. No one's going to beat this G2 team in the best of five. Nobody.
No, they're not. And people will be pointing to Broken Blade's performances, but they're like blinding Rek'Sai. And like, I loved the fact that they had Rek'Sai in the first composition this week versus SK, because you have, there's a difference when you have this Rek'Sai, which, one lane really hard into the Cassante is obviously extremely annoying with the changes they made to Rek'Sai. And I mean, it's just gross because to explain to you guys why the Rek'Sai works this way is because they changed her so that based on level, you get a percentage of your max HP. So you build up her Fury bar, and if it's full, you get a percentage of your max HP back, which is 20% at level 16. Okay? And what that means is by the time you're 3 or 4 items on Rek'Sai and your items are Sunfire Cape, Spirit Visage, and Sterix Gauge, if your meter is full and you burrow, you are literally getting 1,000 health back on Rek'Sai just from burrowing. And then you unburrow, pop up, attack 3 times with your Q, and then the meter's full again. And Rek'Sai also has, and the Sterix shield is absolutely massive because of Spirit Visage. So, he debuted this, did very well against Irrelevant in lane versus Cassante, but it works in this composition because you're running Draven, Annie, and Rek'Sai with a Viego, and the purpose is to get Viego resets. So what you do is you have an Assassinate on Draven ults, and you have an Assassinate on Rek'Sai ult, okay? And so when you get in a target low by engaging with Annie and dealing some damage, you can actually just finish them off extremely efficiently and then chain that into a bunch of Viego resets. So I think this composition works. Now, we take it the other way, and we see them play against Rogue. Well, all of a sudden, the Rek'Sai, like, it doesn't matter if you get a kill. And also, very intelligently, and I want to shout this out, Comp built a very early Serpent's Fang on Senna, and that actually just killed the Ivern shield. It killed the Sterix Gauge shield. It killed the Karma shields. And this item buy probably won Rogue the game, if we're being honest. It was absolutely massive to get this Serpent's Fang and proc it across the entire composition. It was it seems like an obvious buy, but very, very good that they picked that up. And so the itemization ended up being great for Rogue to go ahead and take that win. And then we're back to the Zac in the top lane kind of shenanigans once again, which Broken Blade has brought out this year. But, maybe you don't play that into Jace, right? Maybe we don't do that. And they also were trying to skirmish pretty consistently, and they were losing, and Douglas was getting, super fed in this game as a result of those early skirmishes. They were losing these fights. I think G2 had a very workable team composition that game, and they should have been able to play through the bot lane. But the crazy thing about that game for G2 is you take Kalista Leona and you just don't play through bot lane. Like, you don't try and get kills. You just let Carzzy and Hylissang sit down there and farm, free farm. You're just going to have a bad time. So I don't know. I think they were experimenting a little bit in these drafts with some of these more like fringe picks. And Broken, people will shit on Broken Blade, but Broken Blade played extremely well in his first top lane Rek'Sai game, and it made sense with the composition. So I see this as really experimental by G2. We know they take the foot off the gas if the games are meaningless. Nobody would have thought, this team is going to go 9-0 in best of ones. Like, it's not who they are. But I think in best of threes, they win all of these series. Like, I don't seriously think that they lose best of threes to Rogue.
Specifically on the last week, it makes sense to experiment because you're already going to make it and you can beat everyone in the bracket and it's double a limb. Like, it's one of the only times ever I can almost approve, like, potentially not trying to win the game. Because, like, in this scenario, it's if people don't get it, the other reason why, if you can do this, it's brilliant. Because actually teams have done this before in Counter-Strike, Monty. Sometimes if you're the dominant team, sometimes in like in a smaller tournament, in like a random BO3, you fuck around with your map pick just to see, like, can we win on other stuff? Can we test it out? Are we actually decent at this? Because you're also going to win their map, but you're better than them. You're just a better team, right? I actually don't mind this on this particular case. Like, I actually do think that this is way better than a scrim to test it out. In a scrim, you don't know if they're really trying. They're going to try and beat this comp in this one. It's actually not even that terrible a concept.
Thorin, I'll do you one better. They've already qualified for MSI. Like, do they actually even care potentially about winning this split?
Adam, it doesn't matter. He just needs to play attention.
But like, my point is that G2, the stakes are very low because they've already qualified for MSI by winning Winter. I'm sure like they're not thinking about it that way because you want to get more championship points to qualify in a high seed for Worlds. Oh. You don't necessarily want to play in like play-ins for MSI. You would be the lower seed at MSI. So, but the thing is like you can never delete that information from your brain. You can never, they're always going to know that they. Whatever, guys, we're just going to MSI anyway.
The corp in your brain is always going to be waiting if you let your foot off the gas, of course.
Yeah, and it makes you a lot less desperate, right? It makes you a lot less desperate. Now, I still think they're going to win this split, but I also think, like, it may not be the cleanest playoffs we've ever seen from them as a result of the fact that they already fucking know they're going. They already fucking know they're going. If I'm G2, I am much more focused on improvement right now than I am on winning all my fucking best of ones. Like, you already qualified for the play. Like, just think about it if you're G2. You've been dominating. You crushed everybody in Winter. You're probably crushing scrims. You're a better team. So why not use this time when you definitely have already qualified for playoffs on this last week to just run some weird shit, try it out, even though their comp versus Rogue was just objectively bad and like we don't need to test that. It was just shit.
That was a step too far.
That was a step too far. But, in this case, I think you can just be like, well, we're confident we're going to beat anybody in the double elim, best of 3, best of 5 portion. So fuck it. Let's just try and improve. Let's not focus on winning. Let's work on improvement. Let's work on some weird comps and see what we can do. And then we'll just start to turn it on when we get to playoffs, or fuck it when we just get to MSI. Like, they have a lot of confidence and it's deserved and it's justified. And they are a very good team. And I love all the people who have come out of the woodwork being like, Monty, do you still think they're a top 10 team in the world? Yes, I do. Have you guys been watching the other regions? Who are even the competitors for them right now? Are you looking at me and being like, yeah, that KT and D plus team, they really seem like they're better than G2. Fuck off. They are not better than G2. FPX, look, I fucking love Milky Way, but like, if we're being real, the fourth seeds, the fourth best, there's like a giant cliff in LPL and LCK between like third and fourth place. So even if you think those fourth seeds are better, okay, so we have 4 teams from LCK, 4 teams from LPL. That's still only 8 teams. So now you have to say, well, either there's an NA team that's better, obviously not, or there's even 5th seeds. Are you guys are going to tell me that D plus is better than G2? Fuck no, their shot calling is terrible. G2's mid-late game shot calling is 1,000,000 times better than D pluses. 1,000,000 times. Like, are we really like going down that far?
Smith, are you telling me
NIP?
D plus? D+ players against G2, their bot lane would get murked, mate. Murked. Are you kidding me? There's no way. They get wrecked. They get wrecked.
Like
mate.
NIP, LNG, Weibo. You think these teams are better than G2? They're not. They're not. Like NIP is fraudulent as fuck. If you've actually watched their games, watch them play top later this week. Guarantee you they're not winning that one. They got, blasted by BLG last week.
A point that plays to what you're saying is one of the reasons why we're all saying Milky Way is the truth, not FPX the team. It's because FPX the team has also benefited from some of these other teams being sauced. The other lineups didn't work out. It's the fact that NIP wasn't that good and fucking what they call LNG isn't that good and EGG's terrible. This is what's allowed EDG to have this crazy FPX. They wouldn't have done it. They would have lost the game and Milky Way would have just been like the MVP without winning the game.
To FPX's credit, they actually did beat both JDG and Top. So even though the Top won, they shouldn't have won. They pretty convincingly beat JDG.
Yeah, but it's like the Viper in Hanwha Life thing. Put any other jungler into FPX and run those games back, mate. Even Kanavi, put him in, run the games back. Let's see what happens. I don't think you're winning, personally. Because as we say, this is why actually I think your videos, I actually saw a little bit of the one you did recently where you started reviewing the Milky Way games. The reason why yours are actually some of the best ones is because one, as I always point out, you're actually VOD reviewing. The others are live streaming. That is a completely different process. Hence, you are actually analysing while they are reacting and going to go. Like, that's not analysis, mate. It's cool. If I'm watching, I'm with you, but that's not analysis. And so what yours actually shows, like I said, it's not, people think we're just talking about skill when we rate this play. It's, mate, for a rookie, his decision-making is bonkers, that Milky Way guy. I've never seen even a jungler that was strong, like, know when to go out of a fight and back in like him. Normally they just go in and, like, his ability to go on the edge is insane, mate. I've never seen it from a jungler. It's insane.
And just as a bit of advertising about why you should watch my Milky Way video on my YouTube channel, is that as far as I know, I'm the only person who caught this because the casters didn't catch it, and I haven't seen anybody else talking about this, but there is an insane Baron steal that he does on Kindred in the games versus Weibo, where Weibo has Callista with 1,000,000 spears in Baron, and they're going to smite it, and they're going to do basically at like 2,500 HP, they're going to do a Ren smite combo, and they're counting it down. Milky Way literally jumps into the pit, uses Kindred ult to immune Baron to death, right? Well, they can't kill him in the pit either. So what happens is the smite comes in first, because that's how it works, guys. When you do the smite Ren combo, the Ren does more damage than the smite. So you smite first, like an instant before, then the Ren comes through because it prevents the enemy jungler from being able to smite steal it.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yes.
So what
and
happens
you're going to come to your guy when you do the Ren, of course, yeah.
Right. So what happens is the smite comes in and the Ren fails because it's in Kindred ult. And so what happens is the smite goes on cooldown, and even though there are 2 charges on the smite, it's 15 seconds cooldown. So what happens is basically the Kindred ult ends, Milky Way shoots it one time with Kindred and then smites it, and there's actually no counterplay. It's fucking brilliant. I have never seen somebody do this with Kindred before, especially because it requires a situation where they have to have the enemy team has to have a jungler with smite up and Callista. And it was crazy. It's just a fucking nuts play. And as far as I know, I haven't seen anybody else comment on this play, but it is a mega steal. And this is what we're talking about when we discuss Milky Way, is it's like he knows what they're going to do and he has a plan in order to counteract that. And it's not just like, oh, it's a 50-50. It's like, no, I just out fucking played you. I get the Baron. I take it. It's mine. And there's nothing you can do about it. And it's crazy to watch. But I also show some pathing stuff he does, and some of his team fighting and him like playing on the edge. And it's very
what he
fun.
had the other day on Lee Sin, when he goes in, he fucking takes the dragon, goes behind them, ward hops, flashes over the wall, kicks the guy, like that whole team fight. Because the other thing about him as well is this, Monty, he does have really strong mechanics, but actually for a Lee Sin, if you notice, he does tend to walk a lot. He actually moves quite slow sometimes. But again, his decision making is just too cracked. You know what's funny? He actually reminds me in some ways of what Ruler does as ADC. Because the role is ADC, people talk like Ruler's Viper, right? He's just a mechanical god. No, the thing about Ruler always was how clean he is. It's how decisive. And that he doesn't have to have like the crazy mechanic. He just has good enough mechanics to make what he wants work. Like, because that's the thing. Like, this guy looks like he's playing out these skirmishes in slow-mo, mate. It's crazy as to even his cycling of the spells and what to do next. I've never seen a rookie do this. That's the thing. And as I said, the reason he could get tricked with Bo as the rookie is he had all world champions and Doinby. This guy has none of that. He has none of that. I mean, if anything, we're going the other way and giving Life credit for being able to play with him. It's the other way around. He's actually reclaiming Life's career. And the Care guy has benefited so much from playing with him. Now he actually looks competent.
Yeah, Care and Life have definitely had a glow up on this roster.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to say that they haven't been good, because especially Life has been surprisingly good. But again, it is all in service to our one true Lord and Master Milky Way, right? Yes. They know they're the supporting cast around him, and that their job is to enable him. But Life has been great on the Rumble. Obviously, he's been great on. I mean, the strengths that he has is like when he gets on a tank that can engage, like, you know, Maokai, and he gets all the farm because Dokdom's playing Senna, or he gets on a carry like Rumble. That's when he actually does really good stuff. But he really does, alongside Milky Way, form the primary component of their engage, whether it's like an equalizer or a Maokai ult or whatever, right? And that is the identity of this team. In fact, I think probably the easiest way to deal with FBX is to ban out Life, because he actually enables the engages that cause Milky Way to be successful. And you can't ban out Milky Way. So
I wouldn't ban Milky Way. He plays too much. All I would be banning is like Cares Nico, Life's Rumble. Like, these are the cynical, you know, like fair draft picks. You know?
Maokai. Yeah, I think you take those out and you're like, okay, can you guys actually play the game of League of Legends if you don't have the tools to support Milky Way? I think trying to ban the Kindred and the Graves is just a fool's errand. I think it's a fool's errand. Because you actually, you know, with 80 carry jungles, you actually have to have CC and setup for them. So if you take it away, I think it's a lot harder to play the Mountain team.
All I'll say is this. Here's the ultimate diss to Pioshik. Is, bruh, your whole game is about Kindred. You're named after Kindred. And this Chinese rookie is way better than you on Kindred.
I hope he plays his skin.
Game over for you, mate. Fuck you. Actually, fuck you. You were always fraudulent, Pioshik. You know that, mate. You know that. You know that.
Yeah, and you know, FBX also hasn't had the cleanest series. You know, they've gotten close with some kind of bad
we should
teams.
Actually say, for people who don't know, we got our dream. Because they finished 4th, you're going to get at least 2 BO5s of Milky
I know, it's
Way.
great.
That is so fucking dope, in it. Imagine if he actually pops off, though. It's going to be fucking amazing. I don't care if they come 4th, mate. As long as he plays well, that's what I need to see. Like, if he actually can carry the playoffs, fucking hell, it's going to be so sick.
So I think it does depend on NIP's performance versus top, because if NIP beats top, then they should have a better game differential than FBX. Okay. So I think it actually is going to come to, I think it's going to come down to the very last match of the split. But we don't expect top to lose to NIP. That's not something we expect.
No, I think top will even that one, yeah.
So top is also motivated to win because top actually has a better game differential than JDG, and you want one of those top 2 seeds. So if top wins by any score, 2-0 or 2-1, then I think they overtake JDG in second place, which is, I think the tiebreakers are done via game differential rather than head-to-head. Because it was head-to-head, JDG did beat top.
By the way, how insane though is this sentence,
it's game
if I say it out loud?
It's game differential then head-to-head. So yeah, top would be in second place.
But FPX, a flawed team, as we've just said, only won 3 games less than JDG. What? That's impossible, mate. This actually will go down as one of the craziest like split runs I've ever seen. Because I still don't think like FPX as a team overall is going to be that good. Come on. Surely this guy's just going to go elsewhere in the future.
Well, hopefully he's not in RNG prison, which is like, you know, the real concern. Or I mean, if RNG spends money and puts players around him, that's fine too. By the way,
they still got Ming, mate. Still got Breathe. You know, they've got some players you could make a decent team out of this guy.
So if FPX get the 4th seed, which seems likely, then it will. They don't necessarily get into the double limb bracket. They have to win 1 series, but it's going to be against like at best the 5th seed, depending on who comes out of that.
True. Yes. Okay.
And then they would advance to play BLG if they win that series. But
you're right. It's only the top 2 that get the top 4. Yeah, you're right. Okay.
Yeah. So, but I mean, it's a winnable match for them. One would think.
I mean, it seems they're beaten. So there's that.
Yep. So, yeah, I think.
I hope they get the LPL is this as well. A lot of people, this is how you know no one fucking watches the LPL. Y'all just pretend to. Because the record was just broken again. BLG just broke the record again now with Nike for most games won. They went 30-5 in games this split. Last summer, when they had Yamato, they were 30-7, and then they've only had the 17-game split, to be fair, for like the last 3 years or something. So you couldn't have had it before, I think like 2020 or something. So, but this is if you don't know, guys, this is the most dominant team the LPL's ever seen. They lost one series of bullshit on IG, and they lost 5 games. It's like Gen G, they were just smurfing.
And of those 5 games, 2 of them were obviously to IG, who they lost the series to because they lost 2-0. They lost 1 to Top Esports, who is probably going to end up being the second place team in the league. They lost 1 to JDG, so they lost 1 game to each of the other top 3 teams. They lost 2 to IG, and then they did lose 1 to OMG. So maybe a little bit of a stain there. But it's been really, really dominant, as they say, and like basically half their losses are coming against other top 3 teams. So pretty respectable, especially because you always have wiggle room in the LPL to like lose games. So plus 25 game differential is pretty nuts.
Bonkers, mate. It's bonkers.
It's pretty nuts.
That's why I say, where's the fanfare? Like, technically, Gen G and BLG, right, are the obvious contenders for best team in the world. They've both absolutely murked their leagues. Like, they both like won a bazillion games, even though they have. Remember, their sample sizes. We're talking earlier about how we don't even expect G2 to win 9 games. These motherfuckers are like, G2 loses like as many games as these do in a whole split in like fucking 4 weeks or something. What are we talking about?
What's crazy too is that if Top wins 2-0, they end at 29-8, which is actually not very different. So I mean, Top has been quietly very dominant too, and I think fans, if you haven't been watching LPL, might be a bit surprised about Top's performance, because you guys are still thinking of like, oh, Jackie Love is such an inter. Jackie Love for the last 2 years has been very consistent, guys. He has not had very many like of the Jackie Love moments that you're thinking of. Like, he and Mako have been really solid. Cream has been really fun to watch on this team. 369 has been fucking great and playing a lot more carries than he did last year. So Top is an extremely good team at the moment. A bit unfortunate that they lost to JDG, but JDG also has a very exciting, up and coming player in Sheer, who the Chinese government assures us is in fact 17 years old, even though if you look at a fucking picture of this guy, he's not.
It's ridiculous.
He's like 15 max.
I know you haven't even given us a chance. You haven't even picked someone on the board line. Like, basically, Monty, the obvious scenario is you are a person who works in an American liquor store, and it's literally illegal if someone spot checks and finds you've sold liquor to someone under the age of 18. He walks in with a fake ID. Do you serve him the liquor? Of course you fucking don't. This isn't even a debatable one. It's not even like he has a mustache or something. Like, this isn't even vaguely a player, and that's just to buy the alcohol. Like, there's no way. I'm calling bullshit. Like, whatever happened on that, I don't care. There's no way. But listen, luckily it's the LPL. I'm pretty sure loads of people have played when they were like 16 or 15 or whatever. But I just don't buy it. I don't buy it at all. It's egregious. Look up the picture, guys. Look it up and see what we're talking about. It's egregious. It's wild, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely like a McLovin super bad scenario.
He looks like he's just come straight from fucking boarding school or something, man. What are you talking? It's ridiculous. Look at this guy.
But yeah, I think that Flandre was okay, but Sheer has been looked extremely good. And so Sheer's debut and kind of integrating him to this roster has like meant a lot for JDG. I still think that they suffer from problems where like Ruler and Missing get behind and then they don't really know how to win games. But I think JDG on the whole like has been a pretty darn convincing team this split.
It's the fact that, like, Monty, I would dispute if you said this guy was 16. The idea he's 18 years. There's no way. There's no way. Like, I haven't lived my whole life in a bubble and not seen what human physiognomy looks like and how they develop guys. Like, I think I've probably lived long enough to know what someone is up to give me for it.
Yeah, just look at the picture, guys. But here's the thing, Thorin. MSI is taking place in Chengdu in China, so nobody's going to be checking that birth certificate. You know
That's
what I mean?
true.
He doesn't have to leave the country. Although they probably, the Chinese government's probably already falsified his birth certificate like they do for the Olympic athletes. So don't worry about it, guys.
Yes.
He'll be able to, hit up Europe, no problem, later this year for Worlds.
It's the thing, though. The effect also can work the other way, though, I will say, which is actually a famous thing that a lot of Westerners don't know, is that a lot of Asian people, actually, if they've just only stayed in their country, can't really tell the difference between, like, people in the West. So, like, a classic example would be, I won't say who, but someone we know, a mutual. I just don't know if he would get in trouble for me making this joke, but I think it's funny. Back in the day, let's just say some of his teammates were at a Counter-Strike event in, I think it was Korea, and then he goes, because this player was worried, like, because obviously you remember, like, for example, Americans have to be 21 to drink, don't they? So they were like, what's the age of, like, what's the age to, like, drink here? And he just said, white. Because the premise was, if you all just go in as a bunch of Westerners, they're just going to serve you out, and they're not going to ask for the, they're not going to, even if they ask for the idea, what they're going to do with it, they're not going to be able to tell. So they just, the joke is if you were just white, they just let you in, mate. Like, you could be 17, it doesn't matter, mate. Don't worry about it. That was the meme we had.
That's true. That's true. They also just, like, don't want to, I think they also just don't want to get into conversations in English.
Yeah, sure.
So they, like, don't want to ask, and, like, they're just like, fuck it. Also, nobody in Korea cares about that shit anyway, so.
No, who does? Who gives a fuck, mate?
I actually don't think I've ever been ID'd in my entire life in Korea.
No.
Whereas, I mean, the States, I'm ID'd constantly, so. Yeah. Anyway, that's a funny story. So regardless, like, I think JDG definitely looking super good right now.
Essentially, Monty, the main storyline in LPL is this. Look, it's pretty clear BLG is probably going to win, but second place is wide open right now. And it's really interesting because, as you're saying, mate, it depends on the playoff matchups. There's some interesting ways this bracket could go in terms of who's going to come second.
Well, it's also, some of the other teams have had some weird losses recently. Like, do you think JDG is better than Top Esports? I mean, they beat Top, but then they lost to Weibo.
Theoretically.
Like, yeah, I mean, they lost to Weibo, like, the very next week. And part of this is just kind of LPL randomness, right? But yeah, it has been interesting. I'm looking forward to it. There's not a lot to say about LPL right now because we're just waiting for the final rankings and then for the playoffs to get rolling. Just like right in LCK, there's not a lot to say because this first playoff matchup is just shit and nobody cares, and we're just waiting for the week after when we get to see Hanwha versus T1, which is what we're actually excited about. But playoffs are going to be starting this weekend on Sunday, I believe, because the last day of LPL is, as we're recording this, tomorrow, so it's Wednesday. And then they take a few days off and then immediately head right into that mega playoffs bracket, which they will play for 3 fucking weeks. And they actually are going to have the latest final. So this Sunday is LCS finals. And then 2 weeks from that Sunday is LEC and LCK finals. And then the week after that, on the Saturday, I believe, is going to be the LPL finals. And then we go right into MSI, I think, on May 2nd. So obviously, the Chinese teams don't need a lot of downtime because they're not. Yep. May 1st, actually. May 1st. So less than 2 weeks off for the LPL winner, but
which is fitting because then obviously all the Western teams could just be like, Mayday, crash landing, Mayday.
Well, I think the advantage for the LCS teams is that, especially FlyQuest is probably already planning a boot camp in Korea prior to MSI because they know they're going. They've already qualified, and the latest, they'll be in the finals. But, you basically have an entire month before MSI, so ending early may be beneficial to some of the LCS teams that are going, and they need it the most. So, well, I think that about wraps up our League of Legends conversations for this week, guys. I think we will take a quick break, and when we get back, we will do some viewer questions for you.
This is going to be the viewer questions segment. If you don't know, one of the ways you can support us and gain the benefit of being able to ask a question to potentially tailor this segment to yourself, or just make it a little bit more interesting, or find out something cool you didn't know. Maybe you want to ask a personal question about Monty and his career and his life and his thoughts on things or whatever. Or maybe, as I always joke, you just want him to do your English literature homework for you, as a lot of people seem to. You're like Monty GPT. But basically, it's to do so, to ask the aforementioned question and support us, subscribe to our Discord, discord.gg/LastFreeNation, and then you'll be able to access the channel and put your question in there.
Yep. And here we go. Do either of you think Rogue needs a new head coach? It feels like Rogue have played the same style for too long and needs something/someone to breathe new life into them. I mean, they do have a new N-Rated is helping coach now. He's like assistant
He just
coach.
joined the split. Yep.
I mean, I think Freddie and N-Rated are very established and very skilled coaches. I'm not really sure that that's what's going on. I mean, the roster itself, like, has basically been continuously downgraded. It's really the issue. Like,
that's why I say they have anti-GMing. They're trading down players. It's crazy. I've never seen this before.
I mean, Finn is probably better than Shigenda, to be fair. So the recent ones, but it's like, okay. So, I mean, maybe a jungler, you could say it wasn't going so well there, so perhaps you might say like, oh, okay, they have Marcoon now, but like losing Trimby is pretty big.
That's losing upgrade.
Yeah, losing Odoamne is pretty big. Historically, losing Hans Sama is pretty big.
And I'll tell you, unfortunately, I didn't know much about the Zoli's guys. Obviously, he wasn't at LEC level, but Sabatine comes from the French scene, and he told me actually that the Zoli's guy was supposed to have like good mechanics. So I even thought, hey, maybe there's like a strong bot lip. He hasn't been that good, and you saw he pretty much solo lost that last fucking game for them. Like that hasn't worked out. No, it's across the board. It's just sad the way the roster's degraded. So like, if it was the same players, I'd say coaching staff's a problem. But when you've just made worse and worse decisions as a general rule, as a graph going down, what's the coach supposed to do with that? He's only got the pieces he's got.
Yeah, and I think if anything, both Freddie and N-Rated have shown that they're actually quite good coaches over the years. I mean, N-Rated has been now working his way up through the coaching ladder through, lower league teams. Freddie, we praised Freddie because if anything, you could say
years of being a top coach, years and years, mate. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing about Freddie too, is that he actually changed Rogue style massively from being like late game farming into early game aggression. Right.
Yes,
so
exactly.
I think he's pretty versatile too, in my opinion.
And think about this, mate. He was in finals with like completely different types of players. Like he could have fucking Inspired and they could have Malrang. You couldn't get more different fucking junglers. This guy had Tansama, then he had Comp. Like that's the other thing I think so sad in this. Like I don't hate on Freddie 122. Like I'm not going to blame him. I don't think he was given the pieces to work with. Like another thing I think about when I look at this Rogue team, mate, is, bro, where's the leadership in this team? Is it just supposed to be Marcoon? Is that it? Is Marcoon supposed to be like the god shot caller now? Like I never saw that in his career. I mean, remember he came up using the help of Nuke Doc to get to where he is in the career. So like, I don't get it, mate. So I think it's just a fundamentally poorly put together team. So I wouldn't fire those people at all. And as we said with N-Rated, he's only had the one split. I think he only came on this last split, as far as I know.
Yep. Why do you think Messi attracts such a special kind of cancerous fan? I don't know who Messi's fans are, so I'm not really that familiar with like the football
Tom Brady
world.
fans, mate. Essentially, here's the simple thing. You know how there are obviously great debates to be had of like, is this player better or this player?
Yep.
What they do, like the Brady fans, Monty, is they just say, my guy is the best, and anyone who doesn't know that can't even understand the game and is a moron. And it's like, well, that's a brilliant conversation opener, isn't it? I tell you what, why don't I be really respectful to you about your player, and then you tell me how you're not even going to listen to my points, but I'm a brain-dead moron for having a different opinion than you. So essentially, what he's asking about is, unfortunately, it's any kind of a player who wins a lot and is called number one and then attracts the young fans, especially the young fans are the ones that ruin all these convos.
So what you're saying is the worst thing that could have happened for this debate was Messi winning the World Cup, because that was like the final nail in the coffin for these debates.
As someone who doesn't follow football, you're going to love this one, mate. Are you ready for how utterly disingenuous fans are? So there's a little stat that a lot of people will know if they're true football fans, and it goes like this. Actually, one of the weird things about Messi and Ronaldo is they had this one really weird stat, Monty. Even though they're already like won all the club competitions, being the best player in the world,
which
they
are
both
the ones
had this really
that should matter more in terms of their legacy, because the country ones.
I mean,
at
the end of the day. Yeah, the club one, of course, is way more important because you can choose to go to another team. You can't go, well, I don't like Portugal, I'm going to go to Spain now. Like, that doesn't work, does it? So anyway, the premise goes, right, one of the weird pieces of trivia about their career, though, was neither of them had actually ever scored a goal in the playoffs of the World Cup until this last World Cup. And so not only have neither of them won it, but they never even scored a goal, which is crazy, right? You'd think, come on, like the greatest players of all time have all done it. But, so as a result, Monty, every Messi fan never said shit about the World Cup until that year. The whole thing was, like you just said, it was all about Champions League and La Liga and about the Ballon d'Or. And the second that Messi won the World Cup, by the way, from scoring a load of penalties as well, the second he won the World Cup, it only was about the World Cup because Ronaldo hadn't done it. That's how disingenuous. I had to listen to 20. By the way, it's the same thing with Tom Brady, Monty. Like Tom Brady, the
When he
whole
won on
thing
the
at the
Bucks?
beginning, when it used to be, back at the beginning when he won his first 3 rings, Brady against Manning was supposed to be, but Brady's more clutch and he knows how to work as a team. Yeah, Manning has the stats. And then once the stats started to catch up, it became about the stats. I couldn't even believe when that was happening, mate. It's like you literally are doing the 180 argument to what you were saying 3 years earlier. I hate that, mate, because I told you, just like top 10 lists, I always think to be fair about judging someone, unless you're just saying this is my favorite player. If you're saying someone's the best, you have to actually define your ground rules before you look at the players. Because then if you look at them and they don't fit your ground, then you understand I can't say he's the best, can I? I think that's the only fair way to do it. They do it the other way. What they do is they just go, what currently is the stat that would favour my player? Then that's all I care about. So essentially, that's why, the simple answer at the end is this. The reason they are just ass, unfortunately, is they attract very young people who think, and this is probably the most annoying thing in sports right now, they think them saying this guy is the best is the same as them being an expert and correctly judging that he's the best. But if you can't see the distinction there, essentially, if Monty says Tom Brady's not the best, then a guy who knows nothing about the NFL says Tom Brady is the best, and he thinks that means he knows more than Monty. But what Monty knows never came into that equation, you'll notice. In fact, they never even made a point for their player. They just said he is better. But people do. So it's like I've said a bit on Twitter. I also think if you had to say the main problem of the modern age on social media, it's that people think if they say a legend is wrong, then it makes them a legend. It doesn't. The legend might be wrong, but you didn't do shit, mate. So I think that's part of the problem. It just attracts stupid Zoomers, unfortunately.
Are either of you familiar?
It's actually a mega conversation. If you actually do it for real, like a real expert, Ronaldo Messi's an amazing one. You can have all sorts of people. They even played almost the exact same time period. They even play the same league. It's mega. It's actually one of the best like direct comparisons you can ever have, mate.
I just gave up on the Manning versus Brady conversation because it became impossible to have because people just shout about Brady and like you can't even have an intellectually honest conversation, even though they, were basically part of the same era of football, which is also very interesting to discuss.
I mean, here's the thing I always say to Brady fans. Why do you always go on about rings when your guy only has 4 by that logic? He doesn't get any of those first 3 rings. What are you talking about? The first 3 rings were amazing defense, Belichick cheating every fucking year, Adam Vinatieri like hitting balls to planet Mars during a fucking snowstorm. Like, what did Tom Brady do? I mean, he even had like a fucking conference final where he just like inted and didn't even do anything. Like, it's fucking. But so why he gets those 3 rings, I'll never understand. Mate. Those 3 shouldn't even count. What are you talking about? I'll give him the other 4. You can have 4. That's pretty good. 4 rings. It's wild, isn't it?
Are either of you familiar with Dr. K from Healthy Gamer? I don't know.
The guy who did the interviews with LS and fucking, he does like therapy sessions live, basically, if you've ever seen it, in gaming though, in esports. And so he's had like LS come on there. I can't remember who else. Oh, he had Chaos. You remember that? You saw it, part of that one where Chaos came on and told those stories about his mental health in TSM. That was the guy interviewing him. I personally will just say, I think it's actually unethical to do those streams, mate.
Yeah.
You're essentially holding a therapy session with someone in public. I think that's fucked up, personally. I understand they're signing up to it and they're saying yes, but I think in that scenario, you have to be the adult and go, they can't know what the impact of what they're saying could have on the world. Because I'll tell you another thing. If you're famous in the esports world, the last thing you want to do is give a load of personal details. That is the last thing you want to. There's no upside to it. There's only potential downside, in my opinion.
How good?
What was the question, though? Like,
no, if so, do you have opinions? You gave your opinions.
All right, yeah, there we go.
How good actually is Yike compared to other Western junglers at this point in his career? And in retrospect, do you think the move from Jankos to Yike is good or bad at this point? I mean, I think he's good. I'm not sure that I think that he is that much better than Jankos, that Jankos deserved to be replaced. Like, I still think that was kind of a whack decision to make. He's more surprising, I guess, in terms of his champion pool.
Here's an angle no one's ever talked about. I don't believe it's real. Right, first of all, you remember the original story was they were getting El Yoya, I believe, right? That was the original story before Yank. Yep. That was the off-season one. So first of all, they wanted El Yoya over Jankos. And then secondly, I don't actually believe G2 thought Jankos was done. What I think is this, they followed the G2 doctrine, which is you never let players go for free. You sell them when they have years left on their contract. So I think what they did think is this, Monty. It's like Jankos probably only has 1 or 2 more years. We sell him now because they hope they're going to get like €1 million. You sell him now for the $1 million and then you get like the next best jungler And then you have him for more years. Like they were trying to do like a side grid and then have more years. So I don't think they actually thought Jankos was whack. So I think it's a bit of, look, I'm not blaming this guy, but I don't think they sat down and went, Jankos versus Yike. I think it was essentially Jankos is going, we're selling him. Can we get Elliot? Oh, we can't. We'll get the Yike guy and try him out. Now, with that said, when he says like where they at, we all know he just wants us to say this guy's at the GOAT already. This is how boring people are. Because he's won some splits. We're going to pretend it's StarCraft. He won them all on his own, and he was the best in every split he won. So is he the GOAT already? No. He's the guy who's played a year and like a year and a split? A little bit over a year and a split. He's pretty good. He's one of the best rookies we've had. I'll give you that.
I mean, his champion pool gives G2 some jokers in the deck. Like, you always have to respect the fact that the Bel'Veth could come out, which I think is interesting.
Sure.
I mean, he's good. He's good, but I don't think he is, like, better than Jankos. Our favorite fan, Butt Pounder 420. Who would win in a fight, Arsh Goyle or a stiff Breeze? The Breeze. Monty, I believe you mentioned you have experience reading Foucault in college. I do. That was a long time ago. I know you also mentioned you read Roland Barthes in college. Yes, both of these thinkers argue that once a piece of writing is published, it becomes entirely its own character. This is referred to as the author function. Do you think video content negated the idea of the author function? The art or content is linked much closer to the creator when we see and hear them on a video as opposed to reading their writing? I mean, it depends. Like, are you talking about like a video essay, or are we talking about like film and television as art?
I was confused by that too. I thought he meant adaptation by that. Yeah.
I mean, because I assume you're talking about video essays because we're talking mostly about literary or, philosophical theorists here. So I'm going to assume video essays. I mean, I still think that it's open to interpretation through the lens of the video essayist. Just because you're hearing their voice or seeing them explain things, I think it still becomes its own entity, separate, because there's no interacting with it in a dialogue, right? So I think it would be the same. But when I was bored at work, I made a 60-player Hall of Fame for League, basically a team worth of players per season since Season 3. 2 of these players I put in, and 2 were right on the outside. The 4 players were Tarzan, Zeus, Ambition, and Lehens. Which 2 players of these 4 would you put in the Hall of Fame? So 60 players Hall of Fame, a team worth of players per season. So basically, like every season, 5 players.
We can only take 2 of these 4, basically.
Yeah, we can only put 2 of these 4: Tarzan, Zeus, Ambition. I mean, I don't put Zeus in yet because
I'm feeling like Ambition probably is out of these 4.
Ambition is, I think Ambition is definitely in because he also role swapped, won Worlds, and was very strong as a mid laner in the earlier seasons. So I think Ambition. And
maybe Lehens then. Maybe Lehens.
Yeah, maybe Lehens.
Right?
This guy says he put Ambitions and Lehens in. Those were the 2 of the 4. And I think that's probably fair to do at this point in time.
Remember, Lehens had a pretty long career at this point. He's had like a solid 4 or 5 years or something at the top.
Right. I mean, Zeus, you have to remember, Zeus has only had a couple years of actually performing at the top level, because even though he did start out in that 10-man T1 roster, he didn't actually, I mean, Kana got most of the play time, and he was kind of like demoted when they shuffled the roster back down to like 5 players. So for me, and also Zeus like doesn't have the domestic success yet. He's only won that 1 title. And also it's just eye test, because like a lot of the finals, he was just shit, frankly.
He was.
So he's close. I mean, I think all these players are very close to being in that list, but I agree. I think Ambition and
these are all good
Lehens.
names.
Yeah, I think it's a
these
cool
are all
question.
Good borderline names. Yeah.
The 90s, I think Ambition is definitely the shoe-in of those 4. As for the, Tarzan, Lehens, or Zeus, you can make arguments.
Oh, by the way, I should have used this analogy for the messy one. Think of a modern day person where you see their Twitter account and it goes, "Shut up, Faker is the god." Then you click the account and it says, "Join Twitter in 2021." That's a messy fan for you. That's a messy fan for you. If you understand the analogy,
you actually missed all the godlike games. Yeah. You missed all of them.
Yep. And by the way, they also do the same thing, just like Brady. They claim now he's still the best. He's still the best right this moment. They still do that as well. Go on. What's the next part?
The 90s was one of the best for cinema. Rank your top 5 films of the decade. All right, well, I think we're not going to be able to do that quickly. But what are some of your
probably can? I actually do have a list of my top 10 films, and I did put the years and a bunch of them from the 90s. So speak for yourself on that one, Monty. I am the sort of person who has a top 10 films of all time.
He's prepared.
Exactly. Let me find where it is. It's got to be here somewhere. I'm just going to find my top 10 films. Top 10. Let's see. Top 10 movies. Yeah, here we go. Right. So from the 90s. Oh, I have 5 names on here. Perfect.
All right, great.
So here's my top 5. I look, I'll have to scuff the order because it's not an order. I just did 10 films. So my 5 films are going to be, let me figure out what order I want to do them. Okay, I'm going to do Heat. So Heat's number 1,
yeah,
1995 Heat. Check that out, Michael Mann. Then I'm going to go The Usual Suspects, also 1995, Bryan Singer, banger movie. Then I'm going to go Gattaca.
I fucking love Gattaca. I love Gattaca.
1997, really good one. All about the triumph of the human spirit. Then I'm going to go, this is where it gets a little bit wacky. I'm going to go Clerks by Kevin Smith. Yes, it is about dick and fart jokes, but it's very well executed.
It's great.
And then lastly, this one is mad, Monty, because this isn't even like a big Hollywood blockbuster, but it's who I am. I'm actually going to put 1993's Rudy. Yeah, that's right. Rudy, about that guy who wants to play fucking America, because it's one of the most fucking inspirational movies you'll ever watch. It's one of those movies where the guy just suffers the whole time, but look, it's worth it. The payoff is fucking amazing. There's my top 5. So it goes Heat, The Usual Suspects, Gattaca, Clerks, and Rudy. Something for everyone.
I'll do some more shout outs in there. Being John Malkovich, I'm a big Charlie Kaufman fan. So Being John Malkovich was 99. Jurassic Park, I fucking love the original Jurassic Park, just as a piece of cinema. Like, I think it's fantastic. Yeah. 93. Matrix was 99. If anything, the Matrix is just super influential. There's 3 off the top of my head. A lot of Charlie Kaufman's better movies were in the 2000s, but Being John Malkovich is still great. Are Dazed and Sean Gares both top 5 North American CSGO IGLs of all time?
Yes, but the problem is that sentence got less and less interesting the more words you added.
Right.
Because like at the end, Monty, the reason why it's a mad question is at the end, it's like, can people even name 5 other in-game leaders? You know what I mean? Like, who are we even going for after that? Like, yeah, you've got Stanislaw, okay, Nitro, like... Bro, to even get a 5th one, where is it? Where are we going? Like Daps? Like that's the 5 right there, isn't it? You pick one order, but that's the 5. So it's not that great a question, unfortunately. I think he thought it was a great one, but he didn't think through what his 5 would be. You know, it's all good. They would.
Does Smolder take the crown of worst designed champion from Yuumi? No, Yuumi is still worse. Yuumi is the champion that was designed for literally people not to even play League of Legends. So no.
I've always thought the worst thing about Yuumi was that it made already broken champions even more broken when it attaches. Like, that's even stupider. Now you've actually found a way to, like, spread the cancer to other parts of the game, you idiots. So, brilliant.
What do you think of The Sopranos TV show? If you haven't seen it, you would like to hear your guys' opinion on the Italian mafia movie, TV show, books, etc. genre as a whole. Well, I mean, obviously, we're going to fucking say the movies in that genre are super, like Godfather, Goodfellas. I mean, these are some of the best movies ever made. You know, there's definitely a lot of work that's been done on the cinema side.
One of the most consistent genres, if you think, for film.
Yeah.
It's got some amazing Carlito's Way. There's loads. Yeah, of course. It's probably one of the most consistent genre.
So I have controversial takes on the Soprano TV show. I actually don't like it very much. I think.
For what reason?
So I don't actually find the characters particularly interesting, and I find the trope of the therapy sessions gets old very quickly. And I think that it was a very early example of like premiere serialized TV. And so people got attached to it because it was a different style of TV than they had seen in the past, and it allowed them to build storylines. My problem is that serialized TV was just done much better later on. So like it's let me make this comparison. Here's another controversial take. I don't like the Beatles because I feel like while the Beatles were very inventive in the rock and roll genre, as time went on, other people did rock and roll way better than the Beatles. I also think the Beach Boys were just objectively better during the time the Beatles were active. Like I think Pet Sounds like shits all over anything.
That music holds up way better, mate. It's way better.
I mean, Pet Sounds holds up way better. Like Sgt. Pepper's is good, but like Pet Sounds is a way better album today than anything the Beatles ever made.
Awesome.
And so I feel kind of similarly about, I feel very similarly about The Sopranos, where like The Sopranos was amazing, I think, at the time it came out, but I didn't watch it at the time it came out. I watched it later, just like I wasn't alive when the Beatles were playing. And so I think I have a different take because I now have the luxury of being able to see everything that came after the Beatles and after Sopranos. And I can recognize that it was very influential and hugely impactful to the genre, but I just don't think it actually is as good as a lot of things anymore.
The thing is, if people might notice, I very rarely actually put The Sopranos as like a top show when people ask these questions. Because my problem is this: I just think it's a show that jumped the shark. Like, fuck, not even the last season when everyone goes, the ending, like, fuck, it jumped the shark years before that. I do think the first, like, maybe 3 or 4 seasons are really good because I actually do find some of the, I actually do think the characterization is one of the best things about it. Like, I'll give you an example. Normally, I would never give the fuck. If you describe the Carmine character, the fucking his wife, I would never think, well, I actually found that character. I found that character really interesting. I thought it was very well acted. I'd low, so much nuance,
good actress
compared to what I would have expected. So I think the first few seasons are really good. I thought once it became like this huge mainstream juggernaut, I thought it got really bad towards the end. But a lot of American shows are like that, unfortunately.
Yeah. A lot of these serialized shows, the problem is that the scope eventually becomes so big because they ramp it up too quickly that it just has to become like huge. It's the same problem in some ways like that I had with Peaky Blinders, where like the start of Peaky Blinders is really fun.
Definitely jumped the shark on that, yes.
But by the time it's like, oh, well, now he's like the gang leader of all of London. I'm like, come on, dude. Like, because it has to keep getting more and more epic. And it goes from this like Cillian Murphy being this like scrappy little henchman, which was interesting. And they like, well, what does he have to conquer next? Because we have to keep the story getting bigger scope. And it's like, I never signed up for this shit. So get me out.
By the way, this topic actually also does remind me of another thing related to the whole like messy discussion earlier that I hate about modern day discourse, which is if someone says to me, it's actually, by the way, I've put my money where my mouth is. I've done this in my esports career. If I meet someone like an LS and they go, hey, and then they say an opinion that sounds really alien to me, like, what the hell? I don't think that at all. Like, where are you getting that? I don't go, moron, doesn't think what I think. I don't want him to reflect my opinion back to me. If someone like LS gives an opinion that's different, I'm curious. I'm like, hey, let's get into this. Like, why does he think that? Like, what reasons? What's the philosophy behind it? A modern fan for real, Monty, when even we're seeing a subjective list of what we liked as shows, just wants us, without reasons, to just say the shows they like. They're like, but not my show. But not the show I like, though. It's like, no, I'm saying what I like about mine. Yeah, but I'm not interested. What about seeing the show that I like? It's like, that's just the most boring convo you can have, guys. Like, I've always said this, the player that you say is the best is irrelevant. It's the reason why you think they're the best that's interesting. So I find it so sad that people aren't curious and that they just sort of want, like, they literally want an echo chamber of just reflecting back the names they say. They want you to just say Faker is the best, no reasons given, just case closed, end of discussion.
I think the other problem with The Sopranos is that The Sopranos wasn't even the best show on HBO when The Sopranos was running because the best show was The Wire. Right? True. The Wire is just a better show. So, and also The Sopranos was interesting in that it started in the late 90s, and people give it a lot of props for pioneering serialized television. But in my opinion, Deep Space Nine did a better job of serialized television before The Sopranos even started. Because DS9 ran from, 93 to 99? And it had already finished, basically, or was in its final season, which was like the peak of the Dominion War arc. And I think DS9 has held up way better in modern day than The Sopranos has. I think The Sopranos really shows its age now. Because I watched it... I watched it probably 10 years after it ended, and I thought it aged very badly.
That's why the problem is, just like with gaming and esports, the number one fucking curse you can give in the modern day isn't "may you live in interesting times," it's "I hope your favorite hobby becomes mainstream," because that's how you ruin it. So the problem is, just like Game of Thrones, when Sopranos became this mainstream juggernaut, then at that point people are watching just because they're hearing it's popular. Because the one thing I've never understood is this, Monty. The implication, which is wrong, is that these shows are just heralded because they were the best shows ever. Mate, there are shows, I'll give you the obvious one, Deadwood. No one's even fucking watched
Deadwood's
who's
fucking
watching this
great.
stream. So you're all going to tell me about TV and tell me how good the Sopranos is. You've never even watched it, you dickhead. It's full of movie actors, the best fucking character actors you could ever wish for. The stories are all interesting. You'll never guess where the plots are going, but you're not interested in that because no one told you it's the Sopranos and you have to say it's the best. Case closed.
Yeah, Deadwood's great. Love Deadwood.
It's a mad sleeper, isn't it? No one ever brings it up, mate. That's a fucking really good show for the one that no one ever mentions.
Also, I mean, Rome is one of my favorite shows of all time that was canceled after
Classic
2
as
seasons.
well.
Rome is fucking great. If the careers of some of the LFN crew was dramatized similar to Hamilton, but instead of a musical, it was pro wrestling. Okay, I like where it's going.
I've never seen Hamilton, so I have no idea what the reference is. But okay,
I actually get tilted when people call Hamilton a musical because it's an opera, but whatever, it's an opera. Who would you choose to portray the different members? What would their signature moves be? I think we've done this before. Hasn't somebody like, because obviously we had one for Richard Lewis because of like all the Hell in a Cell stuff. I don't know if we I mean,
oh, yeah, we had the wrestling at finishes or personas or whatever.
Yeah,
like that,
I think
right?
we've already done
something
this
like that. I'm pretty
question.
sure we've asked. Yeah.
I don't know. The problem is we have too many heels. Do we have any Degon's like the baby face? It would be funny if we just had like Maniac and Degon versus the rest of us.
Because you do know, depending on the era of time, you could actually have made it so Dom did the heel turn. Bro, he was really popular when he first started the stream. He was at the Cathedral States where everyone was loving him, but then he did sort of the heel turn against the fans because like the rest of us, he gets sick of the inane opinions a million times over. You know, that's one of the ones I find so inhuman, Monty. This is where fans themselves have no compassion for us as human beings. You know, when they go, I used to like how you were 10 years ago when you spoke more softly and weren't jaded. Yes, in the meantime, I have consumed 100,000 shit opinions through my brain from people like you, including this one. That will take its toll on you, like going to war will take its toll on you. I can never be the innocent boy who waved goodbye as I got on the train to go to war, Monty. I have come back, the grizzled veteran who had to flamethrower people to death. Let's not talk about the old days. We can only deal with what we have today.
Also, like, you know, it's our livelihoods, and while it's still fucking fun for you guys, some of us don't really like the fact that Riot and the Saudis have taken over the entire ecosystem, and like
a bit of a backpill, a bit.
You know, the industry we built has now just been hijacked by assholes. So, you know, makes you jaded, turns out.
Oh, it's why, by the way, I won't go into a big thing on it. At the moment, where they're trying to do like another thing where gamers are all evil and we have to like wreck them all. I'm so bored of that, Monty, because here's what I'm bored of. It's not that they do it. I understand why the mainstream attacks gaming. What I'm sick and tired of is this, that people in our industry, endemic people like the Jacob Wolfs of the world and Travis's, welcome in these dickhead barbarians whose whole mission is, I hate white male straight gamers and want them to suffer. And you welcome them in and then go, you will be the guest of honor at our feast for gaming, and then you wonder why they tear the whole place down. You fucking idiots. Like, it's one thing to have the barbarian. You're letting them in the gates. You're letting them in. Why you do that? It's so whacking it. It's so, because the saddest thing is, Monty, you remember this, even if you just go back to, let's say, early 2016, bro, it doesn't even look like this world at all.
No.
I think I've said that story. You know, the one where it came out in, like, I think it was late 2017. After I won the esports awards, they did that famous article for PC Games End where the woman called out me and Richard. Bro, I've never recovered from the fact that that moment made me have hope in esports, because everyone in the industry came out and they're like, look, I might even have issues with these people, but this is a bullshit. They're our people. You're attacking them. This is not true. Now, all those same people would just come out against us if that article was written again, mate. That's how sad the sea change has been. Everyone says we changed. We didn't. We just stayed thinking things like, you know, science for the last 2,000 years had something, a bit of a ring to it, etc. You know?
What are some of the best / funny origin stories you have heard about player IDs? For example, the LCK player Call Me said he got his name because his solo queue name used to be Call Me Pro Scouts. Do you know any like funny origin stories? That is pretty funny though. To player IDs? I mean,
I will say it. I've always found it very, very weird, Monty, when people pick like a first name. I'll give you an example. Like Edward, the CS player from Ukraine, it's not actually called Edward. It's like, what? It's like, I'll never understand those ones. I find those ones quite weird, where you pick like a first name, it's not even yours. Like, what? Okay, that's one for you.
Like Peter, over in the LCK. I mean, one of the funny ones is probably Sneaky, who used to be called Sneaky Castro, who is based off of a Urban Dictionary fictionalized sex move where it's like you smoke a cigar like Fidel Castro and like blow it into your partner's genitals or something like that, But Sneaky Castro is just some bullshit like Urban Dictionary fictional like sexual act.
It's like Tony Sanchez, basically, like something like that, essentially, right?
Yeah, Sneaky Castro. So they made him change his name to just Sneaky.
Which is ironic because actually most of the time in the LCS, it was fans blowing smoke up his ass. Whatever. It was all right. Decent effort.
Would you still do summoning?
I can't think of any, unfortunately. I can't think of a bag of nickname one. It's all good.
Would you still do Summoning Insight if your co-host was a worm? Is this like a Dune reference?
No, the joke they're making is like supposedly one of the new toxic things women have learned from TikTok is when they're feeling needy, Monty, instead of just saying, do you love me? They ask hypothetical scenarios, which as a man doesn't work because we actually think through types of scenarios. And what they want you to just say is they'd love you no matter what. So what they go is, would you love me if I was a worm? Would you love me if I was a puddle of water? And you're going to go logically, well, no, because I wouldn't have met you if you, so you wouldn't even love me then. Oh, so our love's just fit. And it's like, you're supposed to just say, yes, yes, honey. So I think that's what he means. He means, would we still? No, because we're actually fucking adults, so we're not worried about that. Don't worry about it. Let it go.
People always say never meet your heroes. Who is a former hero of yours who lived up to your expectations when you met them? And who is someone who didn't, and how? Feel free to admit the names to the last one.
Okay. Have you ever met any heroes that were cool?
I don't think
Most
I have.
of them are dead is the problem, mate. A lot of them obviously aren't around now, so.
I'm not going to reveal this specifically, but how can I put this? I have to be very careful how I phrase this. So is it
an author or something? An author, maybe.
There is a celebrity actor who I have been a big fan of, whom I declined to meet because I didn't like the person who was going to introduce me, and I didn't want that to lessen my opinion of them. That's about as vague as I can make it.
Listen, I think Will Smith's cool. I don't know why you've got such a big problem with him. And frankly, I respect Frostgoran for trying to hook the two of you up. So, you know, whatever. That's obviously a joke, guys. Those aren't the names intentionally, are they?
But
Sadly, I actually haven't met most of the people I thought were like heroes of mine or whatever. Like I said, first of all, most of them were like dead authors that were never even alive during my lifetime. So, and also historical figures I can never meet. So I haven't really met that many.
I didn't get to meet Cormac McCarthy before he died because he never met anybody, was a hermit, and certainly wouldn't have wanted to meet me. So, and now he's dead, so I can't. Yeah, it's hard. I think most of the people that really have any heroes that are alive.
The closest one is, I actually, believe it or not, way before inside the NBA, Charles Barkley was always one of my favorite players, and I loved that whole thing in the 90s of like, I'm not a role model, and you know, that fucking thing of like an anti-Jordan-esque approach essentially. And I will say, when I met him, he was really cool. But this is the problem with these questions. When they say your hero's going to be a dickhead with feet of clay, they just mean like he's going to brush you off for the interview. Obviously, I only met for a photo run. I only met him for 5 minutes. Like in that 5 minutes, I didn't ask him like, do you think America should have invaded Iraq in 2004? Like, he wasn't going to say anything in 5 minutes. He just shook my hand like, thank you. Yeah, you guys are good. Haha, cool. Yeah. Oh wow. How long are you in Atlanta for? Whatever. You know, whatever. I might even in Vegas. I don't know. But yeah, so I met Charles Barkley. He was pretty cool. I haven't really met anyone that was disappointing. Maybe some pro players. All right, I'll give you one. I'll tell you what, technically, Monty, I can use esports. You're famous within esports. I'll give you a name, which is, if people know the original Golden Five, the 5 players, Neo, Taz, Lord, Cuban, and Luke, they were the ones in 1.6 who won like 4 or 5 majors each, and then they changed to Pasha later, and then eventually went to CSGO. People know the story, right? So the Luke guy, the one that got kicked out, spoiler, the reason he was kicked out is he was a massive dickhead as a human being. And so one time I actually went to an event. It was one of the events where I was just coming back to working events, actually, Monty. I'd been away for 4 or 5 years where I just did writing on the internet, and then I came back, I started working for SK Gaming, so they sent me to one of these events in China, and when I was there, I went up and I asked this Luke guy to do an interview. I thought it seemed like a pretty good player. He won a lot of competitions. He did this thing where he basically said like, yeah, but I'm busy right now. And I was like, well, you know what? If you want, we're in China right now anyway for like 3 weeks. And it's an event where you just play 1 match a day. So I was like, well, you know what? If you want, after the game, I'll just come, tell me what hotel room you're in. We just go do it in your hotel room. Just do it. It'll take half an hour. Just a little recorded thing. And he goes, oh, yeah, okay then. Yeah, this is my hotel room. Tells me it right. After the matches, I do all my work. By the way, this is also when you work in events where it's very hard work as a journalist. Yep. You're working all day long. I finish my whole day. I go back to the hotel to do this extra interview. I go to his door and I knock on the door. And inside, by the way, I can hear the TV players, like football or something on there. They're doing something. I can hear people even talking. I knock on the door. No one comes to the door. I knock on it again. No one comes to the door. I knock on it again. No one comes to the door. Even though I can hear inside, they're listening to TV. It's not, by the way, it's not so loud they can't hear the knocking either. The next day, I go to the event. I don't even go up to the guy, by the way. I think, oh, he obviously doesn't want to do the interview. He wasn't interested. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he even forgot about it, right? The next day, I go there. By the way, before anyone thinks it, it's because of that Polish. This is years before the Polish shit, you idiots. This is when this person has no reason to dislike me. In fact, in 2009, guys, I didn't even give opinions about more stuff. I was just a journalist. I just did straight up journalism. Next day, I go to the venue, right? That guy comes over to me and goes, did you enjoy the interview? And just walks away with a smile on his face.
What the fuck, man?
Just an utter prick of a human being. An actual piece of shit. But you ready for the punchline? This punchline will show you this guy was a sack of shit. So the punchline is this. Then he got kicked out of his team at the end of that year, Monty, and they replaced him with Pasha. And at one of the first events, are you ready for the coincidence of all coincidences? At the first event that his team plays without him, I get hired as a colour commentator because BSL wasn't available, this Norwegian player. And they just, believe it or not, Carmack of all people asks me, because I just work for SK Gaming, can you come, because basically it's just in Germany, can you come and be a commentator for this event? So I go, yeah, you know what, I've never thought about doing commentary, but fuck it, I'll do it as a stand-in. When I went there, I made a point when we were talking about this team, I actually thought they were better with the Luke guy, even though he might not be as skilled as his Pasha guy. I thought he fit into the team better. He did things like watch the flank. When I did this, I go onto SK Gaming website. If people don't know, SK Gaming was a bit like the Facebook of gaming back then. Everyone had an account. Monty probably had one for Warcraft, I've no doubt, right? And it had a messaging function like Facebook. You can DM people. This cocksucker had sent me a DM like, wow, you actually really know a lot about the game. Just because I'd said he was good. This fucking prick. After the way he treated me, what a fucking rat of a human being, mate. There's a good one for you. A sack of shit, eh? Don't care how many majors you won, mate. You dog shit, a human being. Good one.
That's funny. It's a good story.
It's wild, isn't it? It's so wild, though, isn't it? Like, what?
After the NBA All-Star game several weeks ago, many analysts were saying that the pros don't care and that they should consider going away from the All-Star game, dunk contest, and other events altogether. In the NFL, something similar occurred where now the All-Star game is a flag football game, and even the LCS has had an All-Star weekend years ago. Curious what your thoughts are on having All-Star games, whether it's a waste of time since the pros don't want to injure themselves, or if, on the other hand, it's a unique way to see the best players of the game play with and against each other. I don't like All-Stars, so just straight up, guys, Riot, when I was casting, would ask me to cast All-Star events, and I would turn them down because I was like, I don't want to cast like stupid-ass show matches. So I turned down every All-Star event that they tried to hire me for. I think there are fun ways to do it, like maybe if you have like a captain's draft and you can get some banter and trash talk, but they're just done so badly a lot of the times. And in sports, it does risk injury, so it's just kind of dumb. Like the Pro Bowl is also kind of dumb in the NFL. Like you don't want a season-ending injury on like a fucking meme game. In esports, though, it's mostly that it's just boring. I mean, I don't care about them. Do you?
Not really. But the problem is, right? Basically, the NFL one's easy to establish. That one should never have a Pro Bowl because you can't play real football like you say. Like, put it this way, if someone wants to see why you can't have an actual real Pro Bowl, go and type in Sean Taylor Pro Bowl hit. Remember that guy who died, Sean Taylor, that God tier safety? He does an actual hit, like a real playoff game, mate, onto someone in the Pro Bowl and just fucking floors them. Like, if I'm any coach in the NFL, I'm like, don't ever put my players in this game. Yeah. Like, I can't have fucking free safeties just running over their head in essentially like a loosely called game. The NBA one, I actually think people have figured it out, Monty. I saw this the other day online. Whoever said this suggestion, it was just a fan. I think they've nailed it. Here's how you make the NBA All-Star game count again. You make the two teams the world against the North America. or USA or whatever. Because right now there's loads of world basketball players and mega. So you make it like a country stakes thing. It's like USA versus like USA All-Stars is one, and then you make the other one world. So it'd be like
NHL used to do that. They used to do like North America versus. They used to do North America versus the world. I think in the NHL,
something like that. So same concept, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
I think it would be good because then you'd have an extra reason to care, wouldn't you? And try to win the game if you're the USA, for example.
Who is more delusional in the LEC? Supa thinking he is the best ADC in the league, or Targamas thinking the perfect support would have his roaming? I mean, I don't think Targamas is. Targamas, I don't think is mouthing off, but Supa like thinking he's the best AD carry in the league is fucking wild.
No, but Monty, as far as I know, wasn't his thing about roaming though? Wasn't he even talking about like Koreans as well, though? I think like Koreans were included in that. He picked himself, Targamas. That's why it's so egregious. He picked himself essentially over like Korea. I think someone correct me in chat if I'm wrong. Wasn't it like you could? Most players were picking Koreans for that because they did the ADC one as well. Am I wrong? I'm pretty sure from memory that was what it was. Maybe no one fucking comment as usual. They comment every other fucking time on every dog shit topic. Like actually, Thorin, your life wasn't that way. It was like this when you were 4. So whatever. They didn't say it. It's all good. The Super one is mental though, because mate, this guy, that sentiment. If you go and watch the video, Monty, he's not joking. By the way, he wasn't a troll. He actually meant it straight up, and I just can't even comprehend that because like the eye test says no all over the place on that one, mate. What are you talking about? You hater.
I mean, he's fine, but he's not the best AD carry in the league, and he's fourth best player on his team. So, whatever. With the trade of Keenan Allen from the Chargers to the Bears, it sparked outrage within the Chargers fan base about what fan base? What Chargers fan base? They don't have fans. About a fan favorite player being traded, released from the team. So it got me thinking of this. Has there been something similar in esports where a fan favorite player was traded / released that sparked outrage within the team's fan base / of course, esports community that comes to mind? One that comes to mind for me was C9 releasing Sneaky. Yes, that's true. That was a huge one. That literally incited direct harassment and threats to Licorice because of how that situation developed. For additional context, keep in mind for the Allen situation, Keenan Allen was asked about a pay cut but said no as he was coming off his best season of his career. One would argue, so I wouldn't accept a pay cut either. Yeah, I mean, there have been a lot of times when player bases. I mean, imagine if T1 ever or Faker ever left T1. Like that situation would be the worst ever, right? But there's been a lot of these, like Reckless leaving Fnatic.
Double if getting kicked out of CLG's got to be one, surely.
Huge.
They just won the championship. That was a massive one, I remember. Yeah. There's one for you. One. Oh, Reckless leaving Fnatic's obviously a mega one, yeah. I mean, especially when he himself left that season after he told them he'd stay. That was a good one when he went to G2. He went to their rivals. I don't think people appreciate still how crazy that is. That's like those ones in football where people go from Barcelona to Real Madrid and like people want to actually kill you in real life. Like that was a bonkers one. Yeah, there's loads. You can go look them up.
Monty, how frequently did you eat the trolley gummies? I know you have to promote sponsors, but it seems sus since you seem like a very health conscious person. I mean, guys, do you think I don't eat junk food? Like I do. So
this is what they do all the time, Monty. They do this thing. It's a straw man. It goes like this. They act like you can only eat it all the time or never. And you know what the secret is, guys? Moderation.
Exactly.
You just choose when to do it. Yeah.
So let me put it this way about my diet. I am not trying to like get down to like 8% body fat. Okay. Like I'm trying to live a healthy life, but also an enjoyable life. And frankly, out of all candies, I actually genuinely really like the Trolley Sour Bright Crawlers. Yeah. I like those sour and sweet gummies. I like Sour Patch Kids a lot as well. So if I had to pick a sponsor, like that's a great one for me. But the thing about
I noticed with you, those two candies as well are also ones where each one tastes different. It's not the ones where it has like a generic. I actually like the flavors are quite distinct, aren't they?
Yeah. So I mean, there are certain candies that I tend to like. I like gummy candies. I like the Trolley Peach Rings a lot. I grew up eating the Trolley Peach Rings. I mean, I like jelly beans. I like Snickers bars. I mean, they're candies that I genuinely enjoy. But it's not like I'm not here to live my life and just like fast and get like as cut as possible. I want to live a healthy, active lifestyle. and I eat healthily most of the time, which also gives me the opportunity to, you know, have a fast food burger that I enjoy or eat some candy. It's fine. Like I have a bag over here on the couch in the corner of my office of the Trolley Sour Bright Colors. But the thing is, I'll eat like 4 or 5 of them, and that's it, because I don't have a big sweet tooth, and that's just enough for me. But I mean, I eat ice cream for dessert. You know, I eat, you know, grilled pork belly in Korea, which is delicious, but certainly, like, you know, has a higher fat content, right? That the point is like, I don't know, man. Like, I definitely eat fast food. I definitely eat takeout food. But when I'm home, a lot of my meals consist of very healthy home cooked food, because that balances out everything else. It's just about eating in moderation, you know? It's pretty
It's
easy.
the secret to why they're allowed to sell the food, even if, yes, if you eat it all the time, it might contribute to killing you. Because individually, one instance doesn't come close to killing you. So it was you and your gluttony that made you fucked up.
Yeah.
It wasn't the food. Even the worst, like, fucking burger that I might think's trash. It's if you eat it every day, you can have the problem, mate. You can have it once a week or once a month. It's going to be no issue
Right.
at all then, of course.
Yeah, and you know what? I like eating the occasional fast food burger because I think it tastes good, but I also genuinely like the flavor of things like brown rice and whole wheat pasta and kale. Okay, I like broccoli a lot. So, you know, it's not like punishment for me to eat healthy food. I just enjoy all of these things on their own. So it's pretty easy. Like, you know, for lunch today, I had some air fried, like, chipotle marinated chicken breasts that I made, and I made like a, you know, a burrito bowl with like salad and cheese and some salsa that I made, avocados, you know, it's good. It's whatever. For dinner tonight, I had like grilled Korean pork and kimchi and Korean side dishes like mushrooms and like zucchini that had been marinated. It's good. So, I mean, I tend
The question, Monty, that me and Richard get all the time, where people go like, haven't you like sold out now in this way? It's like, yeah, bro, what we did was we bided our time and waited 15 to 20 years, never selling out, always saying what we thought, always being honest. And at the end, we decided, you know what? I'm going to lie about liking these candies.
Also, especially
Such a stupid premise, in it.
It's easy to like candies. And as I've told you guys, as far as our sponsors go, we have turned down big sponsorship deals from things that we didn't think fit us, or like the products that we would not use. So the stuff you see is genuinely stuff like, for example, you know, for every trolley that we have that's sponsoring us, look at our other fucking sponsors like Liquid IV, AG1, and I've been drinking AG1 every day. Okay. So like, that stuff is just probiotics and vitamins, and I've really been enjoying it. So I'm a human being who's capable of enjoying multiple things, and like, I wouldn't just like down a bag of trolley gummies every day, but I do like them legitimately. And I promise you guys, we are not going to take sponsors of things we think are bad. Period. It's not going to happen. You know, we're in a situation right now where we've had a lot of sponsorship interest and people are liking stuff. So I think it's great. And I hope Trolley, you know, we're talking to Trolley again, and I hope they come back because Trolley's awesome.
What I would ask is this. Bear in mind, we've given you 10 years of good faith content that was all really good. And we gave our honest opinions and took all the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. After all that, we can't even get the goodwill that we might have like minor flaws as a human being. By the way, this is how I know none of you have a dad. Because for some weird reason, you're bristling under my fucking thumb as though I'm your dad and you have to like push the boundaries and see where I'm flawed and I'm not a total guy. No, I'm just a guy making a video. Can I just live my life by any chance? Without being treated like, if you can find out that one time I lied once in my whole life, then I'm as bad as the worst criminal who murders people in esports. Like, I'm kind of bored of that game. It's shit. It's just politics all over again. Just politics, boys.
Yep. Anyway, to answer the question, yes, I actually really do like them. I truly do. I was actually super psyched to have them as a sponsor because I like them.
It's actually a candy I myself used to actually eat before we even had it as a sponsor. Yeah, exactly. It's one of the best ones we've had. I agree.
Big fan. And also, they were a really good partner. So we are hopeful that we will have them again later this year. They are awesome. Any thoughts on Athene and his attempt to become a cult leader, since you might know him from the Elite? I mean, I don't know him. I don't know him. I know of him. I mean, there was a possibility that we might actually personally know him. But no, his like WoW. I wasn't part of the WoW community, so I was never like, I thought it was weird. I thought he was a weird guy, but I mean, my opinion of him was very much from the outside.
By the way, a guy typing in chat the same question over and over again. Well, we don't you're the reason why everyone hates Spanish fans. Even if you're not Spanish, you're the reason everyone hates Spanish fans. That's all we're going to address you on. Keep going.
Do you have any thoughts on Athene, really? I don't.
I would just say, like, to me, he's like the proto Destiny. I clocked that guy in like 2014 or something as a moron that was just doing shit for attention and playing a fake ass character. It's just boring to me. I actually thought, if anything, it was his girlfriend that was funnier, the one that was like the one who pretended to be a politician and said she'd like blow everyone who voted for her. Well, at least that was funny, even though it was also equally stupid attention or behavior. I think he's not an interesting guy at all. At all.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of whatever. I don't even know what happened to him.
I think he just kept doing more and more different stunts and doing other things and stuff. Like at one point in time, one of the stunts he did, Monty, is he claimed he was going to reveal to the world a theory of everything that explained all physics. It's just boring, mate. And it's like I say about the Destiny one. Here's the weird thing to me. It's not why I don't want to talk to Destiny. It's why random people think I should. What's interesting? Yeah. It's just the shit fucking StarCraft Zerg who was never elite talking like, well, on Wikipedia, I didn't see that. That's it. That's the whole gig. And then half the time, all he does is just ignore every point you make because he didn't read that Wikipedia entry. It's just boring, mate. What I don't get for real is why you want me to talk to these people, why you think I should watch them. You can watch it all you want, mate. Go for it. Watch it all. Go watch fucking Frostorian Steam. Watch anyone you care about. Why would I need to be involved, though? I like people who are cool. These people aren't. It's boring. They're just attention whores. Right, go on. Next one.
All right. We have part 2 for Monty, since we have similar tastes in whiskey. Which is your favorite peated whiskey, and where does Lagavulin 16 place in the rankings? I'm wondering because it's the most popular and marketed one. For Thorin, favorite cider. Okay, so peated whiskeys. I told you I like Islay malts, which tend to be very peaty. Lagavulin, for the record, why it is the most heavily marketed one is because it's owned by Diageo now. So the distillery was bought by Diageo, and Diageo is one of the largest spirits companies in the world. So they've heavily marketed it. Lagavulin's all right. As for more peaty whiskeys, I prefer Lafroig, which is like the nastiest, peatiest one. I would look at Compass Box Peat Monster. There's one for you. I like Ardbeg Ushkadil quite a bit. So there are some options for you. I mean, like I said, Bowmore is another like kind of slightly, I mean, it's still pretty peaty, but not for Islay malts. But Bowmore is my favorite distillery. So that's another one that does have that peatiness to it. But I would say, I mean, Lafroig and Compass Box Peat Monster. There you go. Cider?
I just like basically the good British ones. So I like this one called Brothers Cider. It's a pear cider. All the ones I like pretty much are pear ciders. And I like one called Old Mout. These are both the ones with really delicious flavors. A lot of the ciders, as long as they're sweet, are good. I even like Kopparberg and some of the Swedish ones. I just like the ones that are sweet, basically. And I'm not that big of the appley flavor. I prefer it to be the pear one because it has a very neutral base, and you can put whatever flavor. You can put strawberries in there. You can put anything in there. So those are two good ones.
Final question. I recently viewed a documentary titled The Most Unlucky Melee Player of All Time, Cody Schwab documentary. If you were to create a documentary focusing on the experiences of a particularly unlucky player in games such as League of Legends, Counter-Strike, or other esports, who would you choose to feature?
Is this a joke? Have you never heard of Upset? Yeah. Mate, I might have the most unlucky career ever. What are we talking about, bro? This is crazy. This guy's career. He's come 10th place 4 times now. And by the way, he was never the worst ADC in any of these splits ever. What are we talking about? I think he's the winner for me, mate. There's a lot of Counter-Strike ones that have been cursed too, but this is the worst
Flame?
one because some of it, Flame's a pretty good one. He's up there, especially because he never won the title in the end.
Yeah. I mean, Score.
I never won Worlds, yeah.
Like, it took him forever to win a title as well. Like, fucking forever for how good he was. He cursed himself, though, by staying on KT all those years. But yeah. Any Counter-Strike ones that come to mind?
I mean, if we're talking about unlucky, I think in CSGO, the career of existence was pretty unlucky. The problem is he sort of cursed himself because he blew it at majors. But I do think aside from that, he had a lot of times where he didn't keep the talent that he wanted to. I mean, he might fix it now, but Alexi B's won. Alexi B's been a mega
That's
IGL
true.
for like 4 or 5 years. It's only now that he's then got a team again that could do something, though. Like, I mean, think about how unlucky he is, Monty. He even went to Navi, and then Simple just fucking quit the game and just went out. Like, you can't get a break. He was on G2. And then think about when he was on G2 with
got
Nico,
thrown
they
out.
replaced him with Huxley, but then also brought JKS in quietly. And then people act like, well, Huxley's team's way better. Meanwhile, the JKS guy was like fucking way better than the Jax guy they had before. So yeah, that's another good one. It's a lot of IGLs, because if you notice, IGL and jungler or ADC, we're picking roles where you can't just 1v9 the game. It can't only be you that does it, you know.
Yeah.
So I think these are all good picks.
All right. Those are all your questions for this week, guys. So thank you for your Discord subscriptions. We appreciate it. We will be back next week to talk about LCS finals, LCK playoffs, LPL playoffs will have started by then. And we'll get into the bracket with LEC as well. So lots of exciting stuff as we head towards MSI. We'll see you next week.